Time is 10:07, and we will call this meeting of the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board to order. Today is Friday, February 28, 2020, and we welcome everyone. We have a nice-sized crowd today. I would like to ask Commissioner Oldmixon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
At this time, I'd like to mention that if any visitors wish to speak during the public comment section, that there are little slips of paper outside the door, and you can hand them to Dion over here. Or, Dion, do you also have some available? Okay, I have some here. Okay. I would also like to note, for those of you that are here to receive continuing ed credit, just to remind you of the rules on how to receive that credit. So you can receive up to 4 hours, depending on how long the meeting goes today. You must attend the entire meeting and provide photo identification, and you must check in and sign the attendance roster with the staff that's outside at the entrance. So we do know that there is some construction going on. They're trying to figure out where it is originating. In the basement. It's in the, we do know it's in the basement. And so it might disrupt the people watching online, but because we have minutes being taken, we're going to try and work through it. I would like to note the timing of 2 agenda items. Agenda item number 11, we will move that to 11:30 to land as close on 11:30 as possible. And depending on the need for an executive session today, we will, that might be moved as well. We will now have roll call.
Chair Sarah Oakes.
Present.
Martha Gail Reed Lynch. Present. Chance Bolton.
Present.
Clayton Black.
Present.
Jim Jeffries. Tony Pena.
Present.
Lester Renfro.
Present.
Stephanie Robinson.
Present.
And Elizabeth Present.
We have one board member that gave prior notice that he would be tardy today, and so that does not require a board motion. We will just acknowledge it whenever Mr. Jeffries gets here. I'd also like to recognize that we have a new commissioner for this meeting, for the first meeting for the new commissioner. Chelsea Buckholtz has joined us. As most of you know, she came from the Trek, from inside Trek, and she is now the executive director for both Trek and the commissioner for the Appraiser Board. So we welcome her. We also have 2 departing members of staff that we would like to recognize today. I know that there are a lot of people who would like to speak, and I invite any members of the public who would like to speak to take this opportunity to do so as well. We would like to, as a board, first recognize Commissioner Oldmixon. And I have something for you, so if you will come up, but I wanted to say just a few words. The commissioner and I were talking a week or so ago, and I was asking him about the history of something, and the conversation started off at 1999. And as he's talking, I'm feverishly writing names and dates and trying to download as much information from him as I can, because I realize as I'm talking to him that this resource is going to be gone. And so at that moment, it just really hit me, how invaluable that knowledge is, and how much we appreciate somebody that has that kind of foundational and institutional knowledge about this agency, really from its inception. And so obviously that will be missed, and we just wanted to wish you well in your retirement. We know that you are not going away. You're not going off to play golf and fish. And so we got you a little gift that is really to congratulate you, but it's also represents the professional accomplishments still yet to come.
You don't have to open it.
Commissioner, you should stay close.
I will. Oh, sorry.
We have a few other items for you. One is a certificate of recognition of your extraordinary accomplishments during your 10 years of exceptionally dedicated service to the Texas Real Estate Commission and to TALCB. And lastly, we have a flag that has not yet been flown over the Capitol due to construction, but it will be flown over the Capitol in your honor. And so we honor you today by giving you this stand-in flag that will be flown and then returned to you. I did want to say a few things about Commissioner Olmixon's accomplishments. Doug has served TALCB for 10 good years. I came to know him as a classmate in the Governor's Executive Development Program, where he thrived as an extrovert. He has since encouraged staff to attend that same program to receive the rich training skills that he enjoyed and benefited from. This is one of the qualities that I most appreciate about him, is his willingness to grow and encourage his staff. He believes the best in each one of his staff and does not give up on people. Many of you have known him for much longer than myself and have experienced some of his significant accomplishments firsthand, but I wanted to walk through a few of those that are specific to the appraisal world today. One that supports all of our license holders is the implementation of the Department of Public Safety and FBI rat-back process, which reduces the fees for our license holders and streamlines the process for renewals for our license holders. That saves license holders more than $2.2 million per year. He has modernized the rule development process to involve more stakeholder input and to minimize unnecessary burdens and enhance legitimate consumer protections. He has made policy meetings more inclusive and interactive with website calendaring and links, annotated agenda with links to all of the relevant meeting materials, and live web streaming of meetings that work better when there's not construction, and an annotated agenda with live AV archival abilities on our minutes. He's updated and formalized the MOU between TREC and TALCB so that it's more transparent. He's brought all of the agency's technology forward from an era of older proprietary data systems to a more web-enabled, accessible, distributed service model that updates routinely as technology is improved. He implemented Versa and Nubis and digitalized all of our legacy file records and converted incoming mail to electronic distribution and retention. He's eliminated cash receipts and added MIP and updated our internal systems to CAPS HR. He has built the agency's reputation with Arrow. He served on the board of directors of that body. And he's helped update membership criteria, develop services, served on many panels, and facilitated multiple public policy and best practice discussions. He's upgraded our agency's websites to modern design and platform, and modernized our branding and added more tools and systems for better communications and services to meet current consumer or customer expectations for interaction and responsiveness. And he relocated the agency from a privately owned and rented facility in a poor condition in a challenging neighborhood to a somewhat modern state office building in the heart of the Capitol complex. And my favorite, and I believe his lasting legacy for this agency, is that he helped gain the self-directed, semi-independent status to achieve control over the resources that the agency needs to thrive, tailoring fees to reflect services while paying a fair share of necessary state overhead without subsidizing non-related obligations. Doug, that is a gift to this agency, and it's one that comes with a great responsibility, but we are very grateful for your substantial work that you've given over the last 10 years. We thank you for the way that you have diligently served the state of Texas and staff and the agency for Texas. We're forever grateful for your significant contribution. Thank you, Doug.
If there's anybody else that would like to speak, who loves public speaking?
I'll say a few words.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, I want to speak both to Doug and Kristen. So it's been an absolute pleasure to serve with y'all, work with y'all, and this is by far, of all the boards, committees, commissions I've ever served on, continue to, this is my favorite, and it's because of individuals like you two. So it's just been a pleasure working with y'all. Y'all's leadership abilities are fantastic, and I thank you for all the hard work and dedication that y'all have done in helping make this board what it is today. So excuse me, fighting a cold. So on a personal note as well, though, consider me a friend for life, and if y'all are ever out in the Midland, Texas area, please come see me, and I'll try to see y'all every quarter as I come into Austin as well. So thanks again, and I wish y'all well in everything that y'all do throughout the rest of your lives.
I'd like to go ahead and thank Doug for your service, for your commitment to our industry. I've worked with Doug. I've known him since back before when he worked at the General Land Office in the Texas Veterans Land Board, and I've had the pleasure of serving on this board. I think what I'd like to say is we are really going to miss you. I'm going to miss you personally. This board's going to miss you. This profession's going to miss you. I want to thank you for all you've done to move us forward and appreciate that commitment. And if we're talking, going on and handling Kristen, I don't really know what to say. She and I kind of develop a relationship. She probably sees more of me than she wanted to since we're in the same building. And I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate your willingness to always hear me out, and you always responded quickly, and I and this board is going to miss your counsel and miss you personally. Wish you both the very best in the next phase of your life. Thank you all.
We do want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work and contribution of Kristen Warman, who came to the agency in 2014 and has served as the general counsel for the last 6 years. She has recently accepted a new position as general counsel for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and she's actually already started there. And so we're just borrowing her for the morning to say our goodbyes.
Okay, I know Doug has some things to say, but first we wanted to provide you, Kristen, with a certificate of appreciation. So come up here. This is presented to Kristen Warman in recognition of her dedicated service to the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board. Her service was from January 20th, 2014 through February 17th of 2020. And just quickly, I wanted to say that I already miss her strong legal skills and her historical knowledge. She has an ability to think on the fly, and she has a strong ability to retain information of all that has happened before. And she is very diligent in her work. There's nobody who works harder than Kristen. She's an extremely hard worker, and we missed you already.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there's no one else to offer any roast comments, then I will let me say a few things about Kristen, and then I'll also say something about my time here. at the agency. So first of all, Kristen is one of the best lawyers I've ever had the privilege of knowing. She is thorough, inventive in good ways. In other words, the ability to see multiple sides of the question simultaneously. I think there was some great philosopher who opined that true intelligence was the ability to hold contradictory opinions and views of the same matter at the same time without your head exploding. So that makes you a very intelligent person. Yeah. Kristen also gave this body, helped to bring this body into a standing and a stature that has, I dare say, has become the envy of many other states. The combined state appraiser regulatory agencies, both the forward-looking nature of the things that we have been able to accomplish here and the commitment to bring others along, to share that through ARRO, the Association of Appraiser Regulatory Officials, of which both Kristen and I had the opportunity to serve on the board, but she moved up through the chairs and only recently resigned as the president of that body. At the same time, we have been through together 3 and now 4 visits from the appraisal subcommittee, all of which since 2013 have been for the first time from the beginning of time to 2013. We always were lacking something major, and starting in 2013 and going forward, we have been in stellar shape. And she has helped to keep us there and move that forward. Kind of beginning with our, there are several programs here that we hold up to be examples for others, and she's been a part of putting those together. The mentor program, the development of the mentor program, expansion of the PIC, the Peer Investigative Committee program, the development of the contingent dismissals, the trainee supervisor course, as well as the voluntary review program and expansion of that to up to 5 trainees, all of which have really helped this agency to become, despite the anecdotal evidence of occasionally that happens, people's experience with regulatory agencies is rarely positive when it's on the basis of a complaint. We understand that. We try to make it at least tolerable, and then the outcome to be positive. And she's helped us achieve that. And so everything that happened here at this agency for the past 10 years has not been, although I very much appreciate the comments that were made about all the things that I did. All I did was I had the opportunity to conduct the orchestra. I didn't play the instrument. I didn't write the music. I had the privilege of doing that. And so there's a lot of other folks who deserve credit as well, including your current chair for helping to get the AMC legislation passed in 2011. The same year we got SDSI, and then another TALCB cleanup bill with our friends at FACT in 2015. The leaders of this body, members, all of the members, but certainly the chairs, Clint Sayers, Jamie Ratliff, who somebody let in the building today, I can't imagine why. Luis De La Garza, Walker Beard, and of course Jamie Wycliffe, our longest serving chair since we converted in 2015 to a full standing agency, no longer structured like an advisory committee. So those 10 and a half years have been, it's been a great privilege, as it was to serve 3 years in the chair that Buster fills today and Mark McAnally filled for 12 years. It's been a tremendous honor to be a part of this organization. And I promise you I'm not going away. My commitment to the valuation profession is long-standing, and it will continue. I will be a member of Arrow, and likely, as you propose policies, I may come back and visit from time to time to comment on one or two. Thank you so very much.
I just wanted to say a couple of words. First, to Doug for hiring me and giving me the opportunity to serve as the general counsel for the board and also for the Real Estate Commission as their deputy general counsel. In both of those roles, I learned amazing things about the field of real estate and the valuation profession that I probably never would have gained had I taken a different path. And I actually told Doug in the interview that my experience with Dodd-Frank was very limited. It was that subject in CLE presentations that I took the opportunity to go and, check in with the office and return phone calls, and the experience of working here opened doors and gave me valuable opportunities to work with a lot of amazing individuals, both on this board, at Arrow, at other federal agencies, but most importantly, members of our staff. I mean, I value the relationships that I have with those staff members, as well as all of you, and really thank you for the opportunity. It's been my pleasure to be here for the last 6 years.
Thank you so much. I wanted to take just a brief moment before sort of the meat of the meeting gets started, and have a little bit of a. I serve on a CASA committee, and they call it the mission moment. It sort of reminds you why you're there. And so I want to just take a moment and recall a conversation I had a few weeks ago with Larry Kokel, who used to serve on this board and I believe was chair for a short period of time. I called him, again, I was chasing down the history of something, a statute or rule change or something, and so he was gracious enough to spend some time on the phone with me. And one thing he said toward the end of our conversation, I said, what advice would you give to me as I kind of begin this this whole journey? He said, I would advise you and the other board members we talked a lot. He said, we talked a lot and we talked some more, and we didn't put things into policy that we should have to solidify those conversations. And so make sure that you carry forward conversations that you have into policy, because that's your job, your policymakers, so to do that. The other bit of advice that he gave us that he gave me that I thought was it especially speaks to the evaluation issue, which we're going to talk about later in the meeting, was he said, when you work really hard, when the board works really hard on any subject that might be controversial, when you think you've solved it, you've really only appeased maybe 50 or 60% of the people, but there's still a problem for the other 40%, and you can't forget that problem still exists for those people. And I thought that was just a great way to to be our philosophy as we move forward as policymakers, and certainly with issues like evaluation. So I certainly appreciate his time there, and just ask that you all think about, what we do here over the next few hours, and as we carry it forward over the months in between at the committee level. Because we have two new public members, I had asked FACT and ATA, who typically have representatives here in the audience for every board meeting anyway. I'd asked them to come and introduce themselves so that they understand, so that everyone understands who they are. And when we use those acronyms, I know that y'all are feverishly trying to learn all the acronyms, that you understand who those people represent. And so I would like to recognize whoever would like to speak first, either with FACT or Joe pulled the short stick, huh?
Paul had court testimony today.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course he did.
I'm Joe Waller, past president of FACT. FACT represents about 1,400 of the appraisers in Texas through all the chapters of the Appraisal Institute, the Texas chapter of American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers, and the Dallas chapter of the ASA, as well as a handful of individuals. FACT was actually formed about 7 months before this board was. The group, the regulatory group that was established in '89 got disbanded and had to be redone. And there was a group that hired a lobbyist and was fighting passage of the bill in '91 that would establish this board. FACT was formed in February of 1991 and got that done. It didn't have enforcement in it. We had to handle that in 1993. I do believe that FACT has found sponsors and helped formulate virtually all of the legislation this board has needed done since then, with the exception of the Sunset Committee, and they didn't need our help. But we've had a good working relationship, I believe, with all the boards, the members, the staff, and look forward to that continuing. We work for our people in the organizations and for all the other appraisers in Texas, whether they know it or not. Makes things kind of interesting sometimes, but because we only represent about 25% or so of y'all's numbers. But we'll hang in there. I think we're the longest lasting, certainly the longest lasting and first multifaceted group. In '91, we hired a lobbyist. We've had a continuing lobbyist / legal consultant ever since then. We're looking forward to an interesting session coming up. Anyway, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
First, let me say thank you for the opportunity to do this. I don't know that this has ever happened before, but Bobby probably can address that better than I. In your packets, I believe you have a handout about what ATA is, so I won't bore you by rereading all of that, but only to say that our true mission, we've been around since 2006, and our mission is to promote a higher standard of integrity and professionalism. And we do that through some of our education opportunities, as well as the associations that we have with the Appraisal Foundation Advisory Council, TAFAC, through our representative Mike Brunson. And we're also part of the we have a Board of Governors member of the National Association of Appraisers. Some of our founding members are here, and I'd like to take the opportunity to honor them, if I may. Bobby Crisp and Dennis and Karis. Those are those who got us started. And Teresa, well, we can't leave Teresa out. Teresa Walker's been with us forever. Most of y'all know Teresa. And we also have a couple more people here from ATA. We welcome you at any time to our meetings. We hold 4 to 6 meetings a year, sometimes regionally, and we would be honored for you to join us. Thank you to our commissioner who joined us and to Tony who joined us at our ATA meeting in New Braunfels recently and spoke to us. We always try to give continuing education credits when we can get it passed when someone from the board comes and addresses us. So you are always welcome. And also Mark Lee, attorney for TALCB, was there too. So we appreciate it, and please reach out to us if we can help you in any way.
Thank you. Now we have some names to the faces that we see out in the crowd at the regular board meetings. I would like to note that if there are any other organizations that would like to attend a meeting and introduce themselves to the board members, that you're always welcome to. You can reach out to certainly me or staff, and we will make that happen. That is an open invitation. Agenda item number 5 is the election of vice chair and secretary. At our November 15th meeting, officers were nominated, with Mrs. Reed Lynch being nominated as vice chair and Mr. Bolton being nominated as secretary. We can consider nominations from the floor today, so I will open the discussion. Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the nominations?
Madam Chair, since I'm the one who nominated these two individuals, I'd like to go ahead and form that motion. So seeing as how there are no other nominations on the floor, I move that nominations be closed and that Martha Gail Reed Lynch be elected to serve as Vice Chair and Chance Bolton be elected to serve as Secretary.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Black and a second by Mr. Pena. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you both for agreeing to serve. The next order of business is the committee appointments. After consultation with my fellow board members, the Budget Committee will be comprised of Mr. Black, Ms. Robinson, and Mr. Pena serving as chair. The Education Committee will be comprised of Ms. Sprinkle, Ms. Robinson, and Mr. Jeffrey serving as chair. The Enforcement Committee will be Mr. Pena, Mr. Renfro, and Mr. Bolton serving as chair. The Executive Committee by statute is comprised of the board chair, vice chair, and secretary, and the AMC Committee is entirely appointed by the governor, and the vice chair of the board, of this board, serves as the chair of that committee. I appreciate all of you volunteering your time, where a lot of the background work is done for today's meeting, for the regular, the quarterly board meetings. As a reminder to the public, the committee meetings are posted on the board's website along with the meeting's agenda and materials. As most of them are done via teleconference, you may listen or participate as a member of the public. I'd like to recognize that Mr. Jeffries has arrived. And we appointed you to a couple of committees, but we're not going to tell you what they are. That doesn't require a motion from the board.
Trash collector, perhaps, or something like that.
Leaping in.
This takes us to agenda item number 7, our 2020 PIC applications, all of which have been reviewed and recommended by staff. They are Dolores Kraft Longoria, Glenn Garoon, Greg Stevens, Joshua Wood, Robert Hetrick, Robert Mormon, Tony Pastilli. Is there a motion to accept the PIC members as listed?
So move we approve the PIC members as nominated.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Jeffries and a second by Ms. Reed Lynch. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. This takes us to agenda item number 8, which is an opportunity for anyone to comment on items that are not on today's agenda. I have 3 slips here, and if there's any additional, then I'll call them after. First, we have Shelby Smith, who is from the Texas General Land Office. Thank you, ma'am.
If I could, we're all addressing the same issue with 3 people. Do you mind if
Absolutely. So this is Shelby Smith, Alyssa McDonald from Newmark, Knight and Frank, and also Bridget Burdick from the Texas General Land Office.
I am Shelby Smith. We're going to each give y'all a little bit of our background before we discuss what our topic is. But I am currently an appraiser trainee working towards my general certification. I have been a trainee since 2016, and I currently work for the Texas General Land Office. I have 3 sponsors, with one of them being board member Renfro, and one of my sponsors is currently a past board member, Mr. Mark McAnally.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Bridget Burdick. I'm also a appraiser trainee working towards the general certification. And my background includes a graduation from Texas A&M with an ag economics degree with a focus in finance and real estate. And I started off in Houston working for a firm, a commercial real estate firm, and they did complex multi-tenant properties and single-tenant type properties. And I also worked in tax tax protest issues. And then I moved to Austin, and I worked for another firm who focused in condemnation. And now I'm with the Texas General Land Office. My supervisor is also board member Renfro, and just a different background.
Hi, my name is Alyssa McDonald. A little bit of my background: I also attended Texas A&M University. I majored in psychology and minored in business, and upon that, I decided I was going to continue and get my MBA. And then I had a job opportunity to start at Integra Realty Resources in Houston, and there I was primarily doing condemnation work. And at that time, JLL had bought the company, and so about a year in, I decided I wanted to come back to Austin because I was in Houston at the time. And now I work for Newmark Knight Frank. We do complex commercial real estate appraisals, anything from land to high-rise mixed use downtown in the CBD, East Side, things of the sort. My supervisor is David Thibodeau. I have had my trainee license since 2017, and I am also currently trying to get my general cert.
So our reason for being here today, we have all taken at least one shot at taking the general certification exam. Me personally, I have taken it twice and have unsuccessfully passed the test. I know Bridget has taken it one time and Alyssa has taken it 5 times. So our concern for being here today, and I've pulled some information from the TALC Board's website, and I see that for FY 2020, the pass rate for general certification is 25%, and that is very alarming. And according to the national website, the Appraisal Foundation, they have only published through 2019, but for 3 years, 2016, 2017, and 2018, the pass rate was 71%, and then in 2019, it dropped to 54%, which is not a gradual slide, it is a drop. And then the fact that the Texas rate is now 25%, that is, I can't even put it into words what that means for the future of the appraisal industry. Some of the items that we feel, first off, when I applied for my trainee's license, I had always heard that the experience audit process was going to be the portion of my certification application that was going to hold me up. And so when I applied back in September, going into that, that was my main concern, was how long the process was going to take. And I want to commend the board on actually really surprising me on my experience audit getting done in a very timely manner. And so now that issue was removed from the concern of me becoming certified, and now it appears that I cannot pass the certification exam. I guess our reason for being here today is what can we do to see is what is the holdup here? What is causing this significant decline in the pass rate to 25%? I am currently scheduled to retake the exam in April, and Bridget is too. Alyssa is actually scheduled to take it on Monday for her 6th time. I am very reserved or hesitant to take it for the 3rd time because if I do fail again, I am required per TALC board regulations to take 30 additional hours of education that, in my opinion, would not improve my testing scores. And I'm going to let Alyssa talk about this because she has experienced this right quick.
Yes, so obviously after failing 5 times, I have a little bit of evidence. So the first couple of times I took the exam, it rocked my confidence a little bit. I've never failed a class ever. I was a psychology major in college with a business minor. So I did not get any exemptions. I've had to take all of the coursework required from the start, all 300 hours. I passed every single class on my first try, taking it through McKissick and Appraisal Institute, various classes being in a classroom setting, including income 1 and 2 and the highest and best use. I did travel to Dallas and Houston for those. So after the third time, I was pretty distraught. I studied very hard. One of my coworkers did use the Appraisal Institute exam study guide in 2018, and she passed her tests on her first try. And she told me that, you know, if you study this book and you know the material in the book, you're going to do great on the test. And so I felt very good about the exam going into it. I am flying through this book. They were saying earlier that it's taking them about a month to get through the book. It's about 1,200 questions or so. I can tell you how many questions are in each section. I have gone through it so many times. I have exhausted all study material. It feels like I have done this. I have I bought the Steve Williamson online exam scholar, appraisal exam scholar. So I have 3 different resources that I'm using. I'm doing well on them. I feel like I really know the material. And after the third time I took the test, I looked at my scores, and even though somewhat consistent on my final scaled score, I'm pretty varied across each section. But I noticed after the third one, my cost approach was not very good. So that's the class I decided to take again. And I had previously taken it through McKissick, so I decided this time I would take it through the Appraisal Institute. The next time I took the test on my 4th try, I scored a 70 when I needed a 75. My cost approach was a little better. It's still not as good as I would like. That is scaled on 14 questions. I got 9 right. On the next test I took, I scored a 69. I actually did 1 point worse after studying harder and getting more exam material. It's my income and my cost approach were the exact same number of questions correct. There were 3 sections that I made a point to study extra hard, and I did do better on those, not by much though. What concerns me is maybe if it's some of the wording in the exam, because the 4th time I took the exam, I got all 16 out of 16 correct on the sales comparison approach. And just from my opinion, I don't believe that you accidentally get 16 questions right without knowing the material. And the next time I took it, I got 6 out of 16 correct. And if I would have made the same score, I'd be certified, or at least in the process of getting my certification right now. This is very frustrating for me, as I am actually considering not going the appraisal route anymore. I think after 6 times, you can say you at least tried. I have been turning away work in the office and giving it to other people in the office because I need the time to study, and I live, breathe, and eat this right now. So I'm doing everything I can, and like I said, I am scheduled to take it Monday again, and I'm concerned because I feel like, although every time I study, obviously I'm gonna learn something new, but is it enough? And is it the right thing? Because it is a test bank and there's different questions on each exam. I've noticed a few the same, but not a whole lot. So that's kind of my testing experience, and I put a whole lot of work and time and money into this, and I actually do like the profession. I would like to stay in it, but I don't know what's going on, but I'm a bright individual. I didn't get here by accident. I'm trying very hard, but I think there comes a time when if I can't advance, I can't advance.
So I've taken the test only 1 time. For my preparation, I gotta say that I've probably studied every weekday for at least an hour, and then on the weekends anywhere from 3 hours to, 10 hours. It's kind of hard to quantify how many hours you've put into the studying, but I've done pretty much what they've done. I asked other appraisers how they passed the test. I was recommended this Appraisal Institute book. Me and Shelby found the Steve Williamson prep course website, and so I went through this material and that material. alongside with some of my coursework, and I took my test at the end of January and came up 4 points short. And I was very confident when I left the test that I had at least passed. There were questions on there that obviously I was like, I don't know, but I definitely felt confident walking out of that test room. So that's my experience with the test.
My experience with the test was very similar with Bridget. The first time I used my prior course materials and the Appraisal Institute prep guide, and then for my second test we studied the Steve Williams. And while I do feel Steve Williams was the most comparable to what the test looked like, Appraisal Institute is not presenting the information in the way that's on the test. And so one of my biggest concerns are the classes that we are required to take for qualifying education properly preparing us for what we're seeing on the state certification exam. Because how they word questions on the certification exam I can't even explain to you how different it is. And when I was taking Appraisal Institute courses, I always wondered, why do they word it so weird? I fully understand now, but it's on a whole new level when you get into there and take that exam. And I don't necessarily know where the problem is, but there's a problem. 25% that's statistics. That doesn't lie. There's something going on here, and we come to y'all today just letting y'all know that there is a problem. I've reached out to 2 additional trainees other than these 2, and they have both taken that the first time and failed and are feeling the exact same things that we are feeling. They just don't live in Austin, and so we're not able to be here today. But it is a problem, and we are coming to y'all to see if there's anything y'all can do for us.
Well, we certainly appreciate the 3 of you coming here. I understand it's not easy to come up in front of your peers and say that you've failed the test. We did notice that there was something going on with the exam rates, I believe, at our last meeting, and sort of talked about it. And then since then, we just said, let's put it on our radar. And since then, we've seen the numbers really go down. As a frame of reference, Commissioner Buckholt said that she looked up the Texas State Bar, the pass rate is 80%. And so, obviously that gives us a little bit of a benchmark. So it is something that is on our radar, as you all know, that that's all happens on the national level. And so I don't know, Buster, if you would like to get into the conversation now, or if you want to talk about it during the Education Committee. It's on the agenda as far as the Education Committee report, so now might be a good time to.
Well, I would like to ask for clarification because I think this is an important issue. Collectively, you all have taken it 8 times?
Yes.
Can you tell me the period of time, Alyssa, is that your name? When did you start taking the exam?
So I opened my application in April, and I didn't start attempting to take the exam until end of May. And then after that, I did not do anywhere near as well as I wanted to. So I took a couple months, and I took it again either end of July, forgive me, it's been a while, but either end of July or early August. And then I did much better, but nowhere near what I needed to be. So I took it again in September. And then this is, as you know, very expensive to take.
How much was the 30 hours?
It's about $600 through the Appraisal Institute. I can't personally afford that, so I'm lucky enough that my company does give me an education allowance. But once you run through it, that's it. It's only $1,000, so it's about a class. So I had already used my education for the year. So September I took a break. Beginning of January, I was on it. I took the cost approach again, passed it again, first time. I'm just not sure that the extra hours are necessary. I didn't feel that I learned a whole lot from it. I did learn a little bit, just kind of a refresher, also another TALCB, good on you kind of thing. They were very quick in processing that because my application does expire in April 4th. So they were very good about getting me reapproved to take the test. So I took it again in January, and then I made a 70, and then I scheduled it again in February because I feel like I know the material. I sat down with my boss and talked about concepts in depth, and he is very good about that. In general, whenever we do reports, we do a lot of mixed use and highly complex deals, so he's very good about sitting down with me and explaining why we're discounting the way we are, and risk on the property and things of the sort. So after that, I took it again. Yeah, like I said, I took it again in February, and I actually did 1 point worse. So now I'm scheduled again for Monday, and I'm hoping for the best. But yeah, so 5 times. Hopefully 6 times the charm. But
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So do you think that it's the way the wording is of the test questions that leads you to have problems more so than the math skills?
I will say I'm very good at math. I've actually never gotten below an A in a math class. What concerns me is a little bit the wording. I'm not sure if it goes beyond that or not. My evidence for that is the fact that I got 16 out of 16 correct on the sales comparison approach the 4th time, and the 5th time I only got 6. I feel very confident about that subject. So the wording, I think, is definitely an issue based on that. And I know some questions are worded in a way that I have to sit there and I'm not really sure what it's asking. You have to really assume things. For example, there is a question about most reliable approach, and it has 2 correct answers, and one would be more correct based on specific information, but it's not included in the question, so you have to kind of assume the other answer is correct. It's kind of like that. I'm not sure that it's efficient in really testing the concepts. It's more of just trying to trick you. It was what it feels like on every single question. And I do understand you're trying to weed out the careless, but we're sitting here and really analyzing these questions, and I think it's weeding out the good and bad.
So what I was trying to clarify was that the 8 times the 3 of you have collectively taken it has occurred since June of last year.
Correct.
Which happens to closely coincide with us observing that our pass rate and the national rate, which was, in my opinion, acceptable around 70, all of a sudden, if you assume it occurred in the second half of the year, the national fell to 54, and our pass rate for the certified, and it's down for the other 2 categories also, fell to 25%. So I've always heard that the questions are worded poorly, and we're being told that really hadn't changed. So with that in place, previously, to some point in time, 70% plus or minus of the people were taking that test and passing it. But at some point, which I think coincides with when you 3 got on this trek, it feels like they changed something. And that's the only conclusion I can come to for our pass average. And we're going to reach out to other states. We haven't got that, but ours fell from near 70 to 25%, which means 50% of the people are missing the mark that used to make the mark.
Right.
And that was my point. I wanted to point out that while you have shared with us what appears to be a long history, it really happened in a very short time, right?
Right.
Okay. And I appreciate the 3 of you for being here and sharing those comments. Thank you.
And may I just chime in just briefly? First thing, thank you so much for being brave enough to come in and speak on the behalf of so many test takers who are facing the same challenges you guys are facing. One thing I want to say, in order to create change, particularly in an industry, it takes people like you to stand up and speak about it. So what you've done today is we've shared light not only with the board, not only with the agency, but with your peers here in this room. They know what you're going through, and now we can all help support you. I will say, as a board, this is very concerning for us This has been a topic that is definitely on our radar, as Madam Chair has explained, and we will not let this go until we can find out how our Texans can do better on this exam. I definitely agree with you. Taking 30 hours, costing you $600, that is a barrier to entry for our people in Texas. We don't need any more barriers to entry when it comes to economic development. So thank you for coming. It is on our radar, and I give you our word that we will fight and do everything we can to help you all be more successful. Do not give up. Do not give up. You all have been placed in an industry for a reason, okay? And if this is where your heart and your passion is, fight for it. Fight for it. Do what you've got to do. Don't give up on it. You've put too much investment and time and money and coming here and with the nerves and everything else you have, I'm sure, in your tummies right now, and fight for it, honey, because if you don't fight for it, nothing will ever change. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Definitely.
So did you want to continue a little bit of this conversation? Because I just want to make a few points. I think you've heard it in these young ladies' presentation. I think it's important to understand that these are just 3 of what appear to be possibly anywhere from 18 to 29, and I'm just talking about certified general, and I apologize if you're on a trek to get certified residential or licensed residential. I'll be honest, my focus has been on the certified general because that's the trek my trainees are pursuing. So I've spent a lot of time, but I think the information I'm going to give you, it can be carried across the board because the rate of success on all 3 levels is very poor. And so when you look at this and you try to dissect what's going on, I think everybody in this room would agree with me that these young ladies seem to be very intelligent, very bright, and I think we would all desire them to be in this profession. And I appreciate the comments from board member, from Stephanie, to encourage you to stay the course. We're taking this issue up. We're going to try to see if we can get to the root of the problem. But when you look at this, there's only 4 possible variables that could go into this problem. And I don't think it's the educators who are providing the education because they've been doing this for a considerable length. And if it was them, you would see a gradual trend of a decline. I don't think it's necessarily the method of how you get the education, which when I mean it's not taking it online or going to the class. And I don't believe, as I think we just had witness, it's the trainees themselves. And so that leaves just the one last variable, and that's the test. And the evidence seems to indicate something appears to have changed at a point in time that has affected the 3 individuals and several others, quite a few, if you look at our own website, that are struggling and are stuck at this barrier. And I'm calling it a barrier when only 25% of the people are able to pass the exam. I consider that a barrier. I'm sorry. It shouldn't be that way. And so I would like to recommend that we reach out in every way we think we can legally possibly reach out to the foundation, to other states, and to have the education committee look into possibly figuring out if in an interim period we might want to waive or suspend the requirement that you get this additional education, to also consider how we can solve this problem or at least attempt to solve it as quickly as we possibly can. I think it is a grave issue, and when you hear somebody stand in front of us who's put the effort and put the time in and then saying they're going to give up on this profession, that really concerns me. And it does, just because she pretty much bared her soul right there in front of us, and I feel for you. And I wish that I could walk out of here today and tell you I can solve this problem for you. But I just can't. So I'm highly encouraging this board to take this seriously and see what we can do. Thank you.
So I will tell you that I have spoken with Mark Lewis, who is the chair of the Appraiser Qualification Board. He's also a Texas appraiser, and it is on their radar. They have noticed the trend as well. They are monitoring the situation, and they're also would like to work with the state agencies to try and gather some more information, whether it be about the providers, whether it was online or in-person classes, the subsequent attempts to take the test. So it is definitely on their radar. They have assured us that the test has not changed, that although it is always an evolving test as they're adding new questions and taking away ones that maybe weren't so good or change with the industry, that basically it's the same material, it's the same requirements, they have assured us. So we will work with them. We are trying to figure out a path to either suspend or change the requirement for the additional education, seeing as how it was written at a time when the pass rate was about 70%. And so we're trying to figure out the quickest path forward for that. Rule changes are difficult. They do take some time, but staff is working on it. We will also be communicating with the AQB and trying to continue to monitor the situation and do what we can at the state level. But it is absolutely important for us, and I second Ms. Robinson's sentiment not to give up, especially if you know that there's something going on right now and it seems like the pass rate, that to me a 25% pass rate, if you're not passing, that doesn't mean that you should give up or that this is not the profession for you. So I would encourage you to keep taking it, and maybe at some point you'll get the right questions.
Oh, your message is heard.
Yes, your message is heard.
Madam Chair, I wanted to mention that from the staff's perspective, we will do everything we can to take this very seriously and bring back to you recommendations on what leeway we have to waive or suspend rules or to make those rule changes. And on behalf of staff, I'm very sorry that you are caught up in this. And Alyssa, on Monday, we will be cheering you on.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
We have also had a request from Bobby Crisp for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Commissioner, board members, thank y'all. My name is Bobby Crisp. I am with the Association of Texas Appraisers. They made me chairman of the board for some reason, I guess because I was one of the original guys and everybody else was going away. So they said, well, let's hold on to this guy somehow. They know quite well that I don't like public speaking. So I don't try to get up as much as I probably should. Anyway, first thing, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I want to thank Colonel Mixon for the time he has given the ATA. He has spent several hours coming over and of his own time just to come out and talk to us during our meetings, just to give us a brief synopsis of what's going on at state level. And he's always worked, when we started this mentorship thing together, he was very instrumental, him and Kirsten and Tony, and gosh, we made up this big old matrix, and if this happens, this goes here, and this, all of that. We were all involved in doing that. So I want to thank him personally. Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate you. The reason I'm up here today is actually on behalf of someone who I thought was going to be here, and that's past TALCB Chair Luis de la Garza. He sent me and several others a letter regarding safety issues along the Mexican border of Texas. He lives in Laredo. And the letter that he sent to us was something of his own experience. It has to do with taking photos of comparable sales. Because once these houses have sold, we don't know who really bought them, especially down there, because they're saying, well, first of all, it's a vacant house, and these people buy it. We don't know who they are. They could be cartel. It could be a place to store paraphernalia, or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, the incident that happened to him, he was driving along after he took this photo, and a car followed him, tracked him down, and when he got to a red light, two gentlemen got out, both sides, approached his car on opposite sides, and of course, wisely, he took off on a red light. So, The issue is, he came up to us as ATA members. Now, we don't have the voice. We're not that strong. So he wanted to come up here today, and I thought he would be here, so I'm here on his behalf. Seeing if we can't get our regulatory agency to reach out to those somehow, because right now FHA is the only one that really requires a photograph in a residential. Fannie Mae, VA, they will allow a MLS photo, but you have to explain why you used an MLS photo and didn't take your own. Well, I don't want to write in a report because I was afraid I was going to get shot. That's why I'm using the MLS photo. So I'm hoping there's something that, as a regulatory agency, that you could reach out to the secondary markets, whoever, the government agencies, whomever, especially FHA. Is there not something that we can do to help protect the appraiser, especially along the Mexican border? And that was my spiel for today. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and we will definitely put that on an agenda item at the committee level to explore. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? We are now on agenda item 9, the ratification of the official record of the November 13th, 2019 and November 14th, 2019. Has 3 dates in here.
Madam Chair, I move that the board ratify the minutes of the November 13th, 14th, and 15th, 2019 board meeting.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Black and a second by Mr. Bolton. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. We are on to agenda item number 10. I will ask the board to look at, under the tab 10, at enforcement matters A, B, and C. We did not receive any requests for public comment on any of these, and there is no action required from the board on them, unless there's any discussion from the board. None. Okay. Agenda item number 11 is, we had said that we would move it to 11:30 if the respondent is here with his attorney, then we can do it now. We're at 11:15, and so if they are available and ready, we're happy to do that now.
Is the respondent here? No.
Okay. All right. We will move that for another 15 minutes. And with that, we will move agenda item number 12, which is executive session. We will move that as well. That takes us to agenda item 13, the committee reports. Ms. Reed Lynch, the AMC Advisory Committee report is included in the meeting materials. You have seen and approved this report?
Yes, I have.
Is there anything from the report that you would like for us to discuss at the board level?
I think that the written report should suffice.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries, the Education Committee report is included in the meeting materials. You have seen and approved this report?
Thank you. I do concur with the report that's as printed. I would like to note that at the last committee meeting, we did discuss the pass on the test that the young ladies mentioned earlier. So this is in process, and I trust from our meeting, our work yesterday, that we'll have that come back to this committee, and I'd like to say that our committee will handle it as quickly as possible. If we need an emergency meeting, I'll call an emergency meeting and we'll get something done.
Thank you. Mr. Bolton, the Enforcement Committee report is included in the meeting materials. You have seen and approved this?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything that you would like to discuss from the report?
Not specifically, but I do want to make the public and the stakeholders aware that we are looking at several concepts and looking at several measures to facilitate greater efficiency in enforcement, increased transparency, and also looking to optimize our resource allocation and also to improve the oversight that the board has over this division of the agency. And so as those continue to evolve, stay tuned because we'll be talking about some new initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Bolton. The Executive Committee report is included in the meeting materials. I have seen this and approved this report. Is there anything from the report that any board members would like to discuss? Hearing none. We will move to agenda item number 17. This is the reports from staff. And I would just like to, Jennifer, to make the note while I'm thinking about it, that when you get up to talk about the education statistics, if you'll make the clarifications that you made to us yesterday about the differences between the national and the that were included in this material. Thank you.
I promised to be brief, and I'm sorry that my coughing is contributing to the construction noise. I do have a doctor's appointment scheduled for late today. Madam Chair, board members, I am today really concluding my second month as Commissioner for TALCB. We remain very much in transition as we enjoy the benefit of Commissioner Olmixon continuing his presence through the end of March. I am learning as I go. Thank you for your patience. Many of my answers are, I don't know, but I will find out. I am committed to finding out, and I really do appreciate your patience in the process of me getting up to speed. You've been very generous. The focus in January and really much of this month has been hiring. I have hired my replacement, Vanessa Burgess, the General Counsel for TREC, and am delighted that she is on board. She is providing me with substantial support. And to complement her work, this is just a FYI for you. I've asked Mark Moore to become a second Deputy General Counsel on the TREC side, shifting gears from TREC Director of Enforcement. So that allows us an additional legal resource in our division. I also want you to know that we've hired an executive assistant. You will hear the name MJ Griffin, and you will likely have some engagement with her. And she had started on the same day Vanessa did, early in the month, I believe February 3rd, and is getting up to speed very quickly. So we are adding some bandwidth in our division, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And as, of course, you are aware, Kristen Werman has submitted her resignation and ended her employment with us earlier this month in order to become the General Counsel at the Department of Criminal Justice. A very big job, and we congratulate her. So with that in mind, I continue my focus on hiring, filling that General Counsel vacancy. That is my top priority, but I want to be very deliberate and assure of that decision, and so I will not be doing that in a speedy way. I want that to happen as soon as possible, but I'm more interested in quality and fit. That's such a key position. I'm also hiring a director of finance to support our need for really financial policy development as Commissioner Olmixon retires. That was a strong suit for sure. And I wanted you to know that Priscilla Peepo has served as the director of staff and support services, and finance has been a part of that. And in her role, some of those duties will continue on the HR side, and we're shifting her duties somewhat. It really just in order to enjoy her strengths in another regard, but are adding that position of director of finance. We will also focus on strategic and organizational planning in the coming months, and also the development of the 2021 budget. That process really begins now, so you can expect that we will reach out to you and want you to be very engaged in the process of that strategic and organizational planning, and also that budget. And as you are aware, we hosted the ASC policy managers, Vicki Metcalf and Claire Brooks, this week for our biennial compliance review. I believe that went very well. It was a very good opportunity for me to learn the process and to get to know our vulnerabilities and our strengths. and to get to know those federal partners and our overseers. I'm grateful that you were able to spend some time with them yesterday during our workshop, and I'm confident that that time was well spent. I also wanted to just thank you for a successful day yesterday in the workshop, for the hard work of the strategic planning and for the budget review. As the commissioner of TALCB, it is important to me to have meaningful opportunities to understand what is important to you and how we, staff, can support your work to govern our agency. Yesterday provided one of those opportunities and was a meaningful beginning to what I hope is a very long relationship between board, administration, and staff. I gained a better understanding of your passions and how to support them, and also your frustrations and how to resolve them. And Madam Chair, as our staff wishes to, as you put it earlier this morning, carry forward the conversations into policy to help you do that. So thank you for your willingness to roll up your sleeves yesterday, today, and in the future to provide direction and insight to our staff. It was a good day, the first of many. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have for me. Clank, 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 clank.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Tony Slagle, Deputy Commissioner. I'm in an odd position in that typically when I'm up here, I'm reiterating an email I've already sent to you about the customer service report, but since it's the end of the month, I can kind of give you a preview of the email you'll be getting in the beginning of next year. So rather than rehash the numbers that are 30 days old, I thought I'd just address where we are today. Thought that might be of more interest. So on the contact center, which is what I'm going to talk about, we've received roughly just around 15,600 calls for this month, for the month of February. 95% of those calls have been handled by staff. And when they came in through the contact center, 92% of those calls were handled by staff on the initial call. In other words, someone called, they got a staff member, they were able to help them without having to transfer to somebody or have the caller go through the courtesy callback feature. We have a hold time of for the entire contact center of 1.5 minutes for the month of February so far. Granted, there's a couple hours left in the work month, but I don't think that'll change much. And an abandonment rate of just under 5%. On the board side, about a little over 10% of the calls that came in for the contact center were for board-related calls, about 1,600 calls. On the board side, the whole time was 1 minute and 26 seconds, and the abandonment rate was 6 minutes and 61 seconds. The board calls are an anomaly because the hold times are always lower than they on the average of the contact center, but for some reason, appraisers hang up more often. They don't wait on the phone. They hang up. The abandonment rate's always slightly higher for appraisal calls for some reason than they are for the contact center, and we can't really figure that out. But if anyone has any suggestions about that, we're happy to take them. I did want to address a couple of other customer service issues on the contact center. Right now we're currently fully staffed. There of the 22 people that are on the phones at any given time, we have 4 people that are currently in training right now that'll be hopefully on the phones at the end of the month. There is one person that is moving interagency to licensing. That position that is happening mid-month. That position's already been posted so that we know to fill that in so that we're not losing any time there. And there's a new tool that we're going to be pushing forward on the education side on both the board and the TREC websites that the education staff has worked really, really hard on, and it allows a license holder to search education by course type, by also by delivery method. And so you can go in and what I'll do is once it's implemented, I'll send you guys a link to it so you can go on and check it out. And we'll also roll it out on the website with an article and some explanation as well. But it should allow license holders on both the TREC and the board side to just go in, and if they need a certain class, be able to search it and see who in their area is offering it. So it should be really, really good for the license holders. On that, I will end that portion of my report. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, but that's fantastic. Yeah, we appreciate that.
And I just wanted to
Tony, I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to commend you. Thank you. So if I heard you correctly, hold times are down to 1.5 minutes.
Yes, for February.
Job well done.
Well, thank
you.
Thank the contact center staff, because they're the ones that do it.
I also want to thank the committee. My committee, we worked really hard over the last couple of years, as y'all know, and Doug helped implement some things. So we got it passed through committee to add some more individuals. And so we heard loud and clear that we needed to get those hold times down. And I want to say thank you to the board for passing on our recommendations from the committee that helped get this done. So hopefully mission accomplished. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And along with my monthly email that you'll be getting, that you can either read or disregard, since I've told you about it already, will be attached the quarterly sunset report, which just shows the numbers of the total calls coming in, the abandonment rate, and the hold time for on a quarterly basis. We report that on a quarterly basis to Sunset, and so once we submit it, we send it to you so you have a copy of it as well. And I just wanted to, since the chair asked Jennifer to come up, just the current policy right now is that you have a summary statement, and that the directors don't typically come up. I mean, since you asked Jennifer, obviously she can come up and emphasize that, but I just wanted to say that was
I wanted to see if we could put it up, because probably not everybody.
Okay.
Probably not everybody in the audience has that material, so I just thought for the conversation that was a good thing to put up.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have, unless anyone has any questions about anything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Chair, thank you for the opportunity to come up and speak to this. If you give me just a second to pull it up. So the information contained in your meeting materials. What's that?
Mic on. There you go. This was not included in the meeting material, so we don't have it available to put it on the screen. But what we can do is include it when we post additional information online associated with this meeting. We can include it there as a supplemental materials. So I apologize for that.
Okay. So what was presented to the board was a comparison of Texas versus national exam pass rate data. However, what was discovered after it was included for your meeting yesterday was that it wasn't an apples-to-apples comparison. In fact, the national exam pass rate information was presented in a fiscal year-to-date manner. I'm sorry, other way around. The Texas portion was fiscal year-to-date, where the AQB calculates on just a calendar year. So what I prepared for you guys and sent to you, which again we talked about in the workshop yesterday, was an actual more in-line comparison. And as Chelsea mentioned, that's something that we can make available to everybody.
Okay. And also, in the past, to make this clarification, in the past, if you look at past exam statistics for the state of Texas, we include all test takers, where the AQB only includes first-time test takers. So again, when you're looking at the information, if you're just wanting to know how we compare and why the numbers, look different, and just to give you some context for that.
And thank you also for making that point. And we'll take recommendations on how to present going forward as well.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Troy Bollier, Director of Standards and Enforcement Services. And you have the executive summary in your materials, but I briefly wanted to touch on 2 points. First, I wanted to introduce the new staff members that we recently hired and are now fully staffed. So if John Phillips, if you could stand up. John is our new appraiser investigator, and John has both commercial and residential experience. And he has a degree in finance and started with us in December and works out of the Dallas area, and we're very happy to have John with us.
Thank you.
We also filled 2 support staff positions earlier this month. First, I'd like to introduce Heather Robertson. And Heather is our new legal assistant. and she actually is an internal transfer, came over from the reception and communication services area, and she has a background in teaching, and we're very excited to have Heather on our team. And then finally, we have Vanessa Galvan, and Vanessa is joining us from the Texas Medical Board, and she has a degree in criminal justice, and she started with us on the 18th of the month as our new legal assistant, so we're very excited to have Vanessa join our team as well. And so with that, our team of 14 individuals is fully staffed, and we're really excited to be getting to work and taking direction from you as policymakers in the coming months. The one other item that I did want to mention, which I mentioned yesterday to you in the workshop, but wanted to make sure everyone at the meeting heard, is that after several months of hard work and your assistance and the assistance of our contract review appraisers, we have finally gotten the backlog of commercial experience audits resolved. And so now, if you submit a application and your experience audit comes over to the staff, it will be immediately paired with one of our contract appraisers, and it'll be looked at in real time. There's no more delay waiting for a resource to be available, so we're very excited that we got that under control.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you, Troy. Is that it for staff reports? Do we have any questions, board members? Okay, so I believe that the respondent is now here. Yeah. And so we can move back to agenda item number 11. This is the discussion and possible action on proposal for decision from the State Office of Administrative Hearings on matter of SOA docket 329-19-5178.
Madam Chair, board members, the proposal for decision before you today recommends the respondent's certification be revoked and the assessment of an administrative penalty of $15,800. Parties are both here and able to present their arguments to you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Troy Bollier, Director of Standards and Enforcement Services, and with me here today is Melissa Tran, our staff attorney who handled this case. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Melissa, since she actually handled the case.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this case comes before you for final decision after a temporary suspension hearing in front of the Enforcement Committee and a full hearing at SOA. In the interest of public protection, I am asking that you accept the ALJ's recommendation to revoke Mr. Anweiler's credential and issue an administrative penalty in the amount of $15,800. That's double the amount that he took from the 5 complainants. Mr. Anweiler is a general certified appraiser who used his credential to steal money from unassuming consumers. In May, the Enforcement Committee heard this case and ordered temporary suspension of Mr. Anweiler's credential, finding that his continued practice constituted an ongoing risk to the public welfare. In July, this case went to hearing before an ALJ who found that Mr. Anweiler engaged in a willful pattern of misleading conduct. Specifically, the judge found that Mr. Anweiler lied to clients to entice them into paying for services up front, all the while knowing that he would not produce a report. She found that he made promises to refund the money and never did. The record shows that Mr. Anweiler has done this in 8 instances. Prior to the case before you here today, the board disciplined Mr. Anweiler in 2017 for the same misconduct. In the 2017 case, the complainant was a sales agent who paid Mr. Anweiler up front for an appraisal report. Mr. Anweiler promised to deliver the report, but never did. He only issued a refund to the consumer after she filed a complaint with the board. As a result, the board sanctioned Mr. Anweiler with a final order imposing an administrative penalty of $500. After the board issued the order in 2017, Mr. Anweiler engaged in this conduct 7 more times. Of the 7 instances, 5 consumers filed complaints. These 5 complaints are before you today for decision. The consumers include a body shop owner who needed an appraisal to sell his shop he wanted to retire, a homeowner who needed an appraisal to refinance his house, an investor who wanted to know what to offer on a potential purchase, a dentist who wanted to sell his practice, and an RV park owner who wanted to value his property. In each and every single one of these complaints, Mr. Anweiler solicited payments up front by telling the consumers that their reports would be done within a couple weeks. After missing the initial deadline, he continued to lie to them. He made multiple promises to each client that the report would be done within a couple of days. He never produced a single report, and he never provided a refund. Through the course of the investigation, 2 additional instances came to light. Mr. Anweiler also defrauded 2 consumers in Houston. Honesty, integrity, and trustworthiness are essential traits to the appraiser profession. The judge found that Mr. Anweiler's actions were deliberate. She found that he engaged in a willful pattern of misleading conduct for personal gain. The ALJ found that as a result of his actions, he harmed clients financially, took time from them that they'll never get back, and delayed their real estate transactions. She also found that he harmed the profession by diminishing the public's trust. Mr. Anweiler is going to ask you for another chance, but he's been given many chances by the board and by his clients. In 2017, the board gave Mr. Anweiler a second chance with a final order, putting him on notice that his conduct was unacceptable. But just a year later, he engaged in the same conduct 7 more times. The 5 consumers in this case gave him countless chances to do the right thing, and he never did. Each time Mr. Anweiler is given another chance, he uses it as an opportunity to steal more money and to betray the public trust. Madam Chair and members of the board, I'm asking that you protect the public and accept the ALJ's recommendation to revoke Mr. Anweiler's credential and issue an administrative penalty and double the amount he stole, $15,800.
Mm-hmm. Good morning or afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Walden. I'm an attorney here in Austin, and I've represented, Mr. Anweiler in this proceeding. And with your permission, he would like to address the board himself. Is that acceptable? Here, go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Forgive me, I'm very nervous. I just want to say I have been a credentialed appraiser for 20 years. I have worked for myself for 10 years. So I have certainly done many things right in the appraisal industry. I've been commercially certified. I've stood in front of many judges and taught them how to appraise under many cases. As far as what's the charges that are up against me, I feel like they are completely gross misrepresentations of the facts. This wasn't even investigated properly, and I can spend a good hour here talking to you about that, but I will not, because my case has already been heard by a judge, and you heard the results of that. What the one fact that I would ask you to not consider is the case in 2016. I stand by that case every day, because I did everything properly with that agent. It is common occurrence that an appraiser takes money up front. This is not something that I'm doing to steal money. It's common because when you get into a dispute about values or other situations of the appraisal, what has happened in the past is you just don't get paid. So you do all the work and you don't get paid for that appraisal just because somebody disagrees with your values. So that's why you take money up front. That said, in this case, in 2016, I took the money up front. It was a real estate agent. I called her with the data. She gave me a value she was trying to hit, which is fine with me. I want all pieces of the equation when I appraise. Even if somebody tells me what value they want, that's okay. But I told her, here's my comparables, here's what I did. I'm not coming up with your value. I think she wanted 475. I was coming up with, I said 375 to 400 is where we're at. And at that point, I got called a lot of names, which is fine, because that's what you do as an appraiser. You give people the facts. Whether they like them or not, you can't control that. So that's what I did in that case. She wanted a refund of her money because she didn't agree. We didn't agree on that point. I said, look, I still did the work. I can still give you the report or whatever, but, you know, I'm giving you an oral report right now, which I did. So I stand by that decision. I ended up refunding her money just because we couldn't come to an agreement with it. I still don't think I did the right thing. She paid for services I provided. So in that investigation, I had the same investigator that I did with these cases, these other 5 cases. In that case, I will quote Mr. Forrester because I remember that so well. John, we have to fine you. We can't let this go because otherwise we look terrible. And I said, well, okay. I've never had any complaint against me before. Okay, so I'm asking you not to consider that because I believe I did the right thing in that case, even though I got fined for it. Moving on to these 5 cases. Again, I can spend the next hour cutting the investigation. I felt like the investigation by, I guess my colleagues, is that correct? That investigated it. I don't feel like it was fair, but, and I've been given much advice to fight this. However, I felt like I had my day in court in front of forgive me, is it arbitrator? I don't know what, okay, forgive me, I didn't know exactly the right term. But I felt like that was an impartial party that heard my case. I'm satisfied with it, especially because I'm the one that was wrong in these 5 cases. I did this. I took money. I did not provide these people written reports, even though in 4 of the 5 cases, I gave them oral reports and told them what the comps were telling me. I still did not provide the promised reports that I delivered. I'll give you a 30-second explanation because I don't want to bore you with what happened to me. But the 30-second explanation is I had too much residential work. I decided in 2018 I was going to get commercial work. I ended up in early 2019 bidding too low, took on too many assignments. I'm a sole proprietor, made mistakes, should have refunded the money, all those things. This is my fault. This is no one else's fault but me. And I'm standing here. I want to emphasize that because I don't feel like that was emphasized in my trial. Again, not sure what to call that, but the mediation or whatever, I don't feel like that was put heavily in front of everyone. This is my fault. I did this. And in fact, 2 of the 5 people I have already paid back. So again, gross misrepresentations of the facts. The other 3 I have I'm paying them. Not big checks because at this point I've been out of work since May 25th without an appraisal license. I have been working at a minimum wage job, but that doesn't allow me to pay back, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. Again, paying them back. I have been paying them back. I have 2 already done. So I'm not here stealing money. I'm not doing this for financial gain. I've been in this 20 years. I know I will not be in business another 20 years if I'm out here stealing money from people. I mean, so am I asking for another chance? You bet. However, I will say that I'm probably done with my own business. The reason I want to keep my license is because I'm a very good appraiser. I have many people that would attest to that. There are people in this room today that came to watch my testimony. I have trained those people. I have, again, been in front of judges. I have 2 companies right now that will hire me as an appraiser, again, I'm not handling money, I'm just being an appraiser, which is what I'm very good at. I can't emphasize enough that I'm sorry that this happened. I would have done things different. I certainly feel like these cases are, I've done nothing wrong with USPAP. I have no USPAP violation here. My sin is money was transacted, the people did not feel like they got what they needed. This should be in small claims court, not in front of my license, having my appraisal license, because again, I feel like I'm a great appraiser. I just want to end it with, I'm sorry, I've apologized to these people. I'm just sorry that this happened. I'm a bad business owner maybe, but I'm a darn good appraiser. Thank you for listening.
Madam Chair and members of the board, I would just like to point out that the ALJ found that the 2017 case was similar in all relevant aspects to the 5 cases here today. I'd also like to state that the evidentiary record and witness testimony that you're basing your decision on has no evidence of payments made by Mr. Anweiler. These statements are not under oath. They're outside of the SOA record and without the opportunity to verify the claims. But what the record does show that Mr. Anweiler is dishonest. This case is not just about the 5 people that he already took money from. It's about the public at large and the risk that he poses to the public. Mr. Brose was one of the complainants. He testified that he never expected to get his money back, but he was interested in preventing others from being victimized as well. Mr. Mochgambia testified that he was worried about the fact that Mr. Anweiler did this in 2017, but was still out there repeating the same conduct. Again, I just ask the board to accept the recommendation of the ALJ to revoke Mr. Anweiler's credential and to issue an administrative penalty of $15,800.
I don't think there's opportunity for that. Does anybody have any questions? I actually have a question of staff. After reading the PFD, what happens if Mr. Anweiler is unable to pay this fine? I believe is it a 20-day? Is what by rule he's supposed to pay the fine?
Yeah. Well, so that is up to the Office of Attorney General to collect the fine, go after the penalty, if they wish to.
That's the only question I have for you. Thank you. I actually do have a question of the respondent as well, or your attorney, if you would like to. So my question is, before your communications with the board in 2017, oh wait.
Try it again if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry.
It's not you.
I'll talk louder. Before the 2017 complaint, were you aware that the board had a rule that said that if you don't deliver a report that you had to refund the money? Were you aware that that was a rule?
I didn't know that was a board rule. That is a business rule in my mind, but I didn't know it was a board rule.
Okay. And before your 2017 communications with the board, were you aware that you had to respond to inquiries from the board within a certain time frame? I believe it's 20 days.
Yes.
You were. So after the 2017 communications with the board, you were aware of that you had to offer refunds if you didn't deliver the report, and that you had to respond to the board within 20 days.
They didn't ask me to do the refunds. My understanding of when they sent me, I apologize, are we talking about kind of the 5 people here, or are we talking about the previous case?
The previous case, yeah. Giving you the benefit of the doubt on them, because things do happen, so.
Right. In that situation, it was a dispute of whether I did provide, because I did provide an oral report to her.
Okay.
And
But you were clear after that agreed final order that it was against board rule to not issue a refund when a report was not delivered?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
If I can just add one comment. Excuse me. I've been fighting cold and cough symptoms all week, and I had implored the administrative law judge at the hearing to consider that. I think, like Mr. Onweiler himself said, his problem's running a business, but he could still, for example, be an appraiser working for somebody else and not being in charge of the money, for example. And it would enable him, if he was able to continue working, obviously, to get people paid back more quickly, perhaps pay a fine imposed by the board. And so to consider, if he can keep a license, just be prohibited from managing the money, operating his own business. If he just works for somebody that handles all that on his own, that would seem to eliminate the risk of this happening in the future. And there aren't any, as he said, no one's ever complained that he violated USPAP in any way. And I just put that before the board for its consideration. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Were there any findings that came up during the investigation where other issues came up outside of the financial part of it, or was it strictly the financial refunds as a primary issue? Were there any other violations at all?
We didn't have any reports to look at. There were no reports produced.
To verify if he had violated any other issues other than that. And then and I'm sorry, this question maybe for the attorney, but thank you very much.
Well, so I'd just like to address one thing. Mr. Walden pointed out that he made a recommendation to the ALJ that Mr. Unweiler work for somebody else, but the issue here is really trust and integrity. So if you allow that, we're just shifting. He could just as easily lie to an employer or supervisor, and we're shifting that risk from the normal consumer to his employer.
Quick question. I know in several times you mentioned you did provide an oral report, but the deliverable was the written report. Is that correct? Okay. So providing the oral report wasn't sufficient for the client. I mean, the deliverable was the written.
A written report, I did not deliver it. I called preemptively, which I do many times in my reports, and say, here's the comps, here's what I'm finding, this is the kind of thing you're facing, and I'm just going to tell you that I've already had one of the non-complainants that she referenced and one of the complainants already called me back and asked me to do more stuff for them because of my research was good. I don't. They've asked me not to. I mean, y'all think I'm a liar or whatever. I don't care. I mean, that's just the facts of the matter. They've asked me to keep it quiet because they don't want that getting on record or whatever, but I do my research. I'm a great appraiser.
Thank you.
If I can add one comment with due respect to Ms. Tron, speculating that, if he keeps a license, he might lie to his employer. There's obviously one narrow type of circumstance, that recurred in this case, and it was adjudicated before the judge. He took money up front, never got the work done, didn't get them repaid, or maybe has some afterwards. And to speculate about, he could lie to an employer, he could do this, he could do that, there's no basis in the record for that at all. That's reaching.
I have a question. In the ALJ's analysis of the facts, he states that you took an appraisal when you knew you were already 7 months behind on another gentleman's appraisal. and then a month on another one. Why did you continue to keep taking assignments when you knew you weren't delivering?
That is my bad decision in what happened. I mean, I'm sorry, that is my bad business decision, and that's what I stand behind that I did, and I'm sorry for. I'm just going to say Eddie because I can't pronounce his name in respect to him. That happened at the time that I was converting back over, that I made the decision to go commercial. Nothing else happened until the spring when all the other complainants, that's when I got overwhelmed. When you put out bids for work, I put out those bids, they were accepted at a later time, which in hindsight, I should have said, I know I said I would do it for this, I can't get it done. But when you've already submitted out the bids, one day you're not busy and the next day you have 18 assignments.
I just have a follow-up with that. When you realized you could not deliver, did you think that ethically you owed it to the client to inform them and immediately make arrangements for either the delay or the refund?
Yes. Unfortunately, my sin, I stand behind it. I did it. I'm not blaming anyone else. What Ms. Tran presented to you is correct. I felt like I still could get those reports done. Those people were very gracious, and they said, okay, John, deliver the report as soon as you can. And then shortly after that is when all this went down and I lost my license. I couldn't finish the reports. I didn't want to face the board having finished the reports, but that is my mistake. That is my business mistake. It's not an appraisal mistake. It's a business mistake, and I stand behind that I did it.
I have one question.
Yes.
After all of this came down and you've been working at your other job, would it have even been an option just to go ahead and finish and deliver the report anyway?
I wanted to do that. In fact, I asked Melissa if I could do that without having a license, saying, hey, look, my license is suspended. I'm not supposed to be doing appraisal work. She, at that time, I thought she was still kind of my friend. I thought this was more a mediation than it was me standing against lawyers. She advised me not to do that because it would be doing appraisal work. And I think she's correct. I shouldn't have been doing, and that's why I did not do it.
And let me remind the board, in response to your question, Ms. Lynch, his license certification had been temporarily suspended without a hearing. So I strongly agree that anything toward finishing a report would have been violating the temporary suspension order. And had he asked me that question, I would have told him the same thing.
May I ask a question? I'd like to ask a question maybe of our legal counsel or whatever. You have made a comment that you could work in somebody else's, under somebody else's tutelage, and I understand that. But what I'm trying to sort out in my own mind, you are a state certified general appraiser, and when we issue that certification or have issued it, not the same thing I am, there's no bounds on business practices that I know of. So, I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just saying that we're licensed you to be an appraiser if we do that. Is that a correct interpretation?
And I'd be happy to address that, Mr. Jeffries. I think generally speaking, yes, that's accurate. I don't think that prohibits the parties here, the board, as part of a final order, an agreed order, a settlement agreement. Mr. Onweiler could agree I will never use to any conditions that he might we could agree on. I will not operate my own business anymore. I will only work for other people. I'll only appraise this type of property. I mean, you can put anything you want to in a settlement agreement. It would be part of a final order of this board. And if he were ever to violate it, well, then he's in trouble again. But it could be done. I think legally it could be done. Generally speaking, you're correct. When you issue the certification, they can exercise all privileges of that certification, including running their own business. But you can put anything you want to in a settlement agreement. It can be part of the order, and it's done deal.
And my quick response to that is I have been certified since 20 years. This will be my 20th year anniversary. So I do not have some sort of 20-year history of stealing money and what have you. This only occurred because of what I explained here is I took on too much work, I bid too low, shouldn't have done it, should have put a stop to it. All those things are correct. But I have been an appraiser 20 years.
Could I?
Yes, sir.
In lieu of those comments you just made, when did you come to that conclusion that you had taken on too much work and had bid too low? And the reason I ask that question is the facts before us say that on June 5th, 2018, you accept an assignment from a Mr. Eddie Zimba, and then several other in between, and then on February 22nd, 2019, you accept a fee of $2,400 from Mr. Terry Kornman. So my question is, when did you come to the conclusion that you were bidding fees too low and you were taking on too much work? It seems to me that didn't come to your mind until you essentially got called before the board in this hearing, that was the reason. That's what you're telling us today, but I just don't see evidence here. It would appear to me you would have come to that conclusion a lot sooner. So could you help me understand that, please?
I can. Eddie's case is a little bit different because it's separated from the other four. Eddie's case was, he said it's about a refinance. That was not what we talked about. What he was doing is he had some damage to his property, and we were negotiating through the damage with that. So that took a few months to negotiate through. My circumstance started happening right at the end of that negotiation with Eddie, which was right at the end of the year. I was still keeping up with my work at that time. Everything was fine. But these other four people, you're going to have the dates in front of you. I do not, but somewhere in the neighborhood of February 2019, I took on all these assignments, all four of these assignments. It was right around the end of March, 1st of April that I'm looking at, hey, I'm going into the busy season of appraisal. I still don't have these done. And these weren't the only ones that I had. I had other ones that I was finishing. So to answer your question directly, it was right around the 1st of April when I realized I'm underwater and I need a way out. And then shortly thereafter is when the cases came to light and I lost my license.
One more question.
Yes.
So during this time period that you're laying out here before us, were you at that time completing all of your other work for the AMC that's reported in here, which we're told about 70% of your work was for an AMC? Were you completing all of that in a timely manner?
Up till the first mid-February, the answer was yes. After kind of the 1st of March time frame, no, I was late on those as well.
So they were getting preference over your other four clients who had paid you in advance. You had their money, but you weren't giving them a preference to complete their work. You were continuing to do the work for the AMC at the same time. And,
yes,
and for the most part, based on what you said, you were delivering that in a timely manner.
Yes,
Okay.
I was doing that. Anyway, again, mistake, first in, first out, sure. Okay. Should have done that.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Melissa, if you please. Can you tell me how the nature, so we have this initial complaint, and then there's 3 others, right, or 4 others, I'm sorry. So how did those come about, and how are these related? I mean, obviously the respondent's the same, but I mean, how did that, were those complaints filed separately? Was there staff contact with these folks beforehand? I'm just trying to understand that.
No, Mr. Bolton. All of these complaints came in around the same time from different consumers.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the board adopt the PFD as written.
Do we have a second?
Madam, I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session and discuss our options with regard to this and how we finalize it.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Buckholz, would we do that at this moment?
Either way, it doesn't matter. You can do it now or you can move on.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's on now, yes. I recommend doing it now just for purposes of allowing the respondent to not wait for a long amount of time, but it truly is up to you in terms of timing.
Yeah, let's.
Recognizing that there are quite a few people in the audience here for the meeting and to get continuing education, we regrettably go into executive session. We will try and make haste, understanding that you all are here waiting for us to return. But of course, you should know also that as a board, we take taking away someone's license as one of the most, unfortunate and critical parts of our jobs here. And so we would like to give him as much consideration as we would give anyone else. And we take that seriously. So the time is 12:09, and the board will now go into executive session to obtain the advice of legal counsel or discuss pending or contemplated litigation, including settlement offers and enforcement actions pursuant to Texas Government Code 551071, and personnel matters pursuant to Texas Government Code 551074, and we anticipate returning to open session. I will give you a time certain. We will try to be back by 1 o'clock. That will give you all time to grab some lunch and be back. That will be our hope. And I will call the open meeting to the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board back to order. We are still on agenda item number 11, and we have a motion on the table.
Madam Chair, I would like to second the motion that's before the board.
We have a motion by Ms. Reed Lynch, and we have a second by Mr. Renfro. Do we have any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I would like to address the board and ask them to reconsider, and then I'd like to make a new motion. And basically what I'd like to do is I would like to reduce the fine from $15,800 to $7,900, and to give the opportunity to the respondent to do the right thing and take care of your clients that deserve refunds. And I would think that should Mr. Onweiler lose his license, and when he had an opportunity to reapply, if he wished to do so, that showing that restitution was ultimately made probably would benefit his application. And so, I want to say this directly to you, Mr. Unweiler. Do the right thing and pay those people back. And I'm going to try to give you some relief on a fine. So that's my discussion.
Any other questions or discussion? I will say that I appreciate that relief and the fact that instead of that money going into the general fund, that it would go toward, that we would trust the integrity of Mr. Onweiler to give that money instead back to the people that that are owed the money. I appreciate that, the faith that that creates.
Madam Chair? May I?
Yes, please.
I think that I've thought about this a lot, and I think from a compassionate point of view, I wanted to make sure that Mr. Anweiler could reapply for certification in the future if he chose to do that. That was an important part of my consideration, and I think that I know this board feels much the same as I do, that this is a decision that I won't say just yanks your heart out, because that's a little over the board, but this is a tough decision, and I do not take it lightly, and so I'd like to express to Mr. Anweiler and his attorney that that was a major part of my consideration, that he could reapply.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to say that besides the compassion that the board feels, I want the consumer to know that we take these complaints seriously and that we have their backs, and that I believe that when ethics are violated, when someone has the experience that Mr. Anweiler does, that he should have done more to resolve his situation at the time that it was occurring. And my vote is based on protection of the consumers and the reputation of all Texas appraisers.
Any other discussion?
I just have a question maybe for council. Okay, so it's got a motion and a second. So it does have to come to a vote. If we vote against it, then essentially it fails, or if it doesn't pass, then with the understanding that there might be another motion being made.
Great clarification. So the motion on the table is to accept the PFD the way it is written. We will vote. If it fails, then Mr. Bolton is then afforded the opportunity to make a different motion.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm. Any further discussion?
Call the question.
The motion is that the board adopt the PFD as written. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
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 Nay.
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 So we need to.
I don't know what the count was. I didn't.
I think we need to do it one at a time.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Ms. Sprinkle?
Aye.
Mr. Renfro?
I'm in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Nay.
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 Aye.
Nay.
The nays have it. The motion fails.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that the board adopt the PFD with the following changes. Reduce the fine to $7,900, and just for the record, the purpose here is to encourage restitution, make things right with your client.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Bolton and a second by Mr. Jeffries. Any further discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to take this time to point out that while I understand Board Member Bolton's intent, I don't know how we would ever be able to enforce that or oversee that or to do anything more to encourage that he make restitution to these individuals. I would also like to point out that neither did he plead with this board to reduce the fine. His only plea was to continue to let him be an appraiser, and therefore I don't see that the motion is really going to help resolve this or do anything for the public's perspective of how we take these complaints.
Madam Chair.
Am I able to address that?
No, I'm sorry.
I'd like to address Mr. Renfro's comments, and they're well received. My belief is that if indeed Mr. Weiler would like to be an appraiser again, then he will reapply. I also believe that making restitution with his clients and demonstrating that in his application would probably benefit that should he wish to be an appraiser again. So I understand your position, but I feel like we have addressed that in my motion.
I have a question. So in your motion, it's the reduced fee, and hopefully he would make restitution too.
Yeah, that's not part of
your
the motion,
yeah.
but it's an explanation as to why.
But
I
that's what
reduced
you
the
were
fee.
thinking.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, I would be in agreement with that in hopes that you take this as an opportunity to do the right thing. We are not always afforded the opportunity to get reduced fines and those types of things, and I think we do have a very compassionate board and a board that thinks very thoroughly through these situations, and that level of compassion is appreciated, with the hopes that the right thing is done for the consumers, because at the end of the day, we need to protect our consumers.
Well, and I think this is not necessarily a means of compassion. It is an opportunity for those that are directly affected by these events to, as a consumer, to be made whole, whereas we don't have the opportunity to do that through the board. So,
thank you for clarifying. Understood. Yeah.
I will say that Mr. Onweiler has said that he would like to continue to be an appraiser, and I appreciate that, and knowing that he will have the opportunity at some point to reapply. There is a question on there about your integrity and moral character, and the reduced fine would allow him to have an answer to that. And if the fine was kept where it's at, then it doesn't really give him an opportunity to then prove that part of it as part of the next application if that's what he chooses to do. So to me, this gives the restitution, and it also gives him a path forward if he would like to become licensed again. Any other discussion?
Call the question.
Would you go?
no,
Oh.
it's up to you.
Okay, so the motion is that the board adopt the PFD with the following changes: that the fine be reduced from $15,800 to $7,900. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe we have 6 for the motion and 2 against it, so the motion passes. Any further discussion on that? Any further needs on that, Commissioner? No? Very good.
Madam Chair, may I request a clarification, please, to make sure I understand the order?
Absolutely.
Basically, my voice has been hard this week. Yeah. And at risk of asking what you all have tried to make painfully obvious here, the fine is payable to the state of Texas, and I've heard opportunities for restitution. So we're looking at the fine. You're talking about $7,900 payable to the state, and then restitutions over and above that.
We have no authority to require the restitution, but I want to give Mr. Onweiler the opportunity, again, to do the right thing and make his clients whole.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on what the board was doing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That takes us to agenda item number 18, which is the discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to Chapter 15322 Texas Administrative Code 15321, 15340, 15341. As a reminder, these rules are rules that were discussed at the last board meeting and have been published in the Texas Register for public comment. We did not receive any public comment on any of them, so they are before the board again for final adoption. You want to move? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, would you
Mr. Jeffries.
would you like a motion?
Yes, please.
I move that the board approve staff's recommendations, which is to authorize on behalf of this board to submit of adoption amendments to 22 TAC 153.21, 153.41 as published, and 153.40 with changes as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes as required for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Jeffries and a second by Ms. Reed Lynch. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 19 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to Chapter 153, number 15315.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Bolton?
So the Enforcement Committee recommends the proposed amendments to clarify procedures to be followed when an applicant submits experience that is involved in pending litigation as part of the applicant's licensing application. The proposed amendments also notify applicants that information submitted to TALCB in support of a license application may be subject to disclosure under the Public Information Act, Chapter 552, Texas Government Code, unless an exemption to disclosure applies. Staff recommends the changes as well.
These proposed rule changes were discussed at the Enforcement Committee?
Yes, correct.
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Reed Lynch.
My motion is to authorize staff on behalf of this board to submit amendments to 22 TAC 153.15 as presented for publication and public comment to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes as required.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Reed Lynch and a second by Mr. Bolton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 20.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bolton.
The Enforcement Committee recommends the proposed amendments to clarify procedures for scheduling an investigative conference with a licensed applicant or respondent to a complaint, and also to establish procedures for recording investigative conferences. We worked this through in the committee, and staff recommends that we move forward with this agenda item.
To clarify, this came from the Enforcement Committee out of an investigative conference in which the attorney requested to record the conference, correct?
That is correct, yes,
Very good. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that the board approve staff's recommendation.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Mr. Renfro and a second by Mr. Bolton. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 21, discussion and possible action regarding the request for Attorney General opinion. This, as most of you know, has been on the agenda for a while and has been discussed for a while at both board level and the committee level. The previous action by the board at the September board meeting, the board moved to adopt the position as presented and to seek an opinion of the Office of the Attorney General. That motion passed by a vote of 5-2 originally, and then Ms. Reed Lynch changed her vote, and so it was passed by 4-3. Then it was remanded to the executive committee, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out the wording for the question to the Attorney General. And so there are two parts to that. One is the question, and the second is the context or background that you provide with that question. We spent a lot of time trying to craft both of those and decide how to word the question and what to include. And we ultimately decided that it was not going to be possible for us to not put our own personal bias in that question or what we gave to the Attorney General with it. And that might lead to whatever the Attorney General's opinion was being seen as illegitimate by one party or the other. And so what we have decided to do as the months have gone on and we have met and tried to work out the wording is that now we know that the clock is ticking, and come August, any proposed statutory changes would be submitted to Leg Council for the next legislative session in January 2021. And so as we get closer to that date, we decided that it was probably better to allow this process to go through the legislative process, which would allow both sides of the argument to come to the table, go to the committee hearings, be part of the crafting of the language, and for everyone to be heard. Because it didn't seem like one way or the other the Attorney General's opinion was really going to get us to where we needed to go. I will say that it is possible, and I would like for the board to consider at future meetings, probably on the committee level and then maybe at the May board meeting, that we adopt some sort of opinion about how we would enforce these cases in the meantime, knowing that there is probably going to be a legislative change. And so what we have today is the possibility to unwind what we did in September, or if it's the full board's decision to try and remand it back to the executive committee to try and work on the language additionally.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bolton.
I move that the board rescind the prior decision to request an Attorney General opinion.
Do we have a second? So the motion fails. Do we have any other motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the executive committee draft a response to how what the jurisdiction is or is not regarding evaluations.
Second.
Go with that.
I might have to have that read back to me. I didn't.
Okay, my motion was that we refer this to the executive committee so that we could come up with the language of how the issue of evaluations could be or could not be handled by the enforcement committee, i.e., do we take a stance in that until a decision is made on evaluations at the meeting that we choose not to enforce or not to hear or not to use our time and our resources to come up with a time and effort on prosecuting or complaints regarding evaluations.
So the previous board's decision to seek an opinion from the Attorney General is still, at this point, something that we would do. And what you're asking is something separate from that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we will still work on the wording for the opinion to the Attorney General, and simultaneously, we will discuss what our philosophy is, or how we would enforce these cases.
Because I do believe these cases will continue to come forward, and my desire is not to spend necessary time on a decision we don't have.
Okay.
I have a kind of a question and comment. So out of that, for clarification, we are now still sending a letter to the Attorney General asking his opinion as to whether evaluations can occur because the motion failed, my motion failed. Is that correct?
I would like to amend my motion to say that we wait for the August issue to get an opinion, not to send it to the Attorney General. However, a compound motion, I might add, that we ask that we direct our enforcement to let the enforcement of or a complaint on evaluations not be heard, and not to waste valuable time until we have a rule regarding evaluations.
I'm not quite sure what to do at this moment. You're not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just takes a minute. I'm going to repeat what I think your motion is so that everyone knows. It would be to rescind the previous motion from September, which directs a request for an Attorney General's opinion. And in the meantime, well, that's part one, rescind the motion. And secondly, to establish at the executive committee level a position on how to address enforcement cases for evaluations in the meantime.
Correct. Well done.
Since I seconded the one that was rescinded, I'll second this motion.
No, can you clarify? Are you saying rescind or rescind?
Rescind.
Undo. You would be unwinding the motion from September.
In fact,
that motion failed.
That motion never got a second, that part of that motion, because wasn't that originally Board Member Bolton's motion and never got seconded?
Yeah, but her motion is multiple parts that includes the same thing as my motion. Is that correct?
So she's effectively amending your original motion.
I think that's
is more precise of what we're doing here.
Sounds good. I think I'm sure that works.
So then you
Well,
are correct.
I'll be honest, I don't really know what's going on either.
This was our carefully crafted plan that we would confuse you all, and so then you wouldn't know what we've actually done.
Where's Kristen?
okay, I'm going to try and explain it. Okay.
Hold on just a second. So have we established that that your motion is on the table, correct? And has it been seconded?
It has been seconded.
And it has been seconded?
That's right.
I seconded
Okay.
it.
Okay. So you asked for an amendment to that motion, basically, correct? Okay. So you are going to clarify what the potential amendment to that motion is. I feel like I'm making things worse for you.
No, I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
What my thought process is.
Okay.
Is that we were going to ask the Attorney General for a ruling on the ability to do or not to do evaluations.
Correct.
And in that, we had our staff prepare an opinion. Okay. I'm saying that we no longer do that because we did not feel like it would be received openly or it would be tainted by the other opinion. And so I thought, and we discussed, that in the executive committee that we might wait until and go through the statutory process of having the ability to do an evaluation.
Correct.
But in the meantime, we need to handle the appraiser's ability to do evaluations and not take our board's time and resources in going through the process of did they do it right, did they not do it right, when we don't even know if they could do it or they couldn't do it.
Right, exactly. At the September board meeting, there was a motion that was seconded, meaning that this board voted, it was a different makeup of this board, but the board voted to request an Attorney General's opinion.
Correct.
So if you seek to unwind that, then you need to rescind that motion from September.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
We made that motion in September. Is there any way anybody can explain to me why we haven't taken the action?
We did.
And are we waiting for the Attorney General's opinion? Is that what we're doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. We attempted to craft the language for the question to the Attorney General, and the Executive Committee could not settle on the wording nor the background and content that would go along with that question. So we come back to the board to say that...
You referenced your personal biases in that process. Is that, I mean, that's why you couldn't come to a conclusion, was due to personal biases. Is that what you said earlier?
Right. In crafting the question, we said if we use this word instead of that word, does that then lead them to an opinion that might be our opinion? Or is it, can you write a neutral question is what we were trying to do, but we couldn't figure out if we were, because we were being influenced by our own personal bias, and we didn't want to not then represent another side of the issue by the way that we worded the question.
And by the inclusion of the earlier opinion.
So if I may ask again for some clarity, it is my understanding that because the Executive Committee could not craft this request, therefore it never was made. And so the intent, I would think now, is to rescind what we decided to do in September, which I would think we would want to do that and make that clear before we start amending and coming up with other motions. Am I correct? Is that what we're talking about right now? Is that what we're trying to decide?
I think that's correct, and also I'm not sure that what Ms. Reed Lynch is proposing necessarily requires a motion. I mean, I think it's fine if it does, but that we ask the Enforcement Committee or the Executive Committee to take up the enforcement of evaluations in the meantime. I will say, to complicate the matter, that the motion at the September meeting had two parts to it. One was to adopt a position, and the second one was to ask for the Attorney General's opinion. So do we treat those two things separately, or if we rescind the motion, does that rescind all of it?
It would rescind all of it.
Okay.
So you would be back I'll leave it there.
Okay.
I have a comment. When you request an Attorney General opinion, you usually just take a stand and then ask for their opinion on that stand. And the Attorney General, he or she, will tell you whether you're right or wrong and based on what. So I don't think you have to worry about the language. Mm-hmm. You just have to make the statement and then say, we need an Attorney General opinion on whether this is legally possible or other restrictions or other parts of the code that may interfere. But I know when we've requested Attorney General opinion, somebody has to take a stand to get it started. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm asking. Did you at least come up with the first statement? Yes, we did. Then that's what you send to the Attorney General.
You have that statement to read?
Well, and maybe for the new members, part of the conundrum was those that voted for it, it was kind of split between the executive group voted against it, and then the others were those that voted for it. So basically we, not intentionally, but as we voted for those that voted against it to make a decision. We were, we were and therefore that's what's happened, is those that were against it were those that were going to make the decision, were being tasked to put it together to present to the Attorney General's office. So if when you ask your kid to mow the lawn and he doesn't want to do it, you may have to do it yourself.
So it would seem that you have to pick one of those, and the one that more were in favor, that's the one you send. And then she, the Attorney General makes the decision on whether that's accurate or not. I mean.
Right. So we did consider that, and if, let's just say for ease of argument that there's a yes and a no side to this argument, although it's multifaceted, that if we asked the Attorney General for the opinion and they said yes, then what does that do? Do the 6,000 appraisers of the state of Texas know what weight the Attorney General's opinion? Does that trump statute? Does it trump rules? I don't even know that. And so does that get us anywhere?
Well,
If they came up with a no, if the Attorney General came back with a no, then it would then the people who were in the yes category would then take it to a statutory change. So it didn't seem like, even if we got that far, that it was really going to get us anywhere.
But a lot of times in these opinion letters, the Attorney General will give you direction.
Okay.
In other words, he'll say, what you said here is accurate and it's supported by case law or by statute, but in this instance, when you used this term, that term is used in other places, meaning something totally different. So there's guidance in that opinion, but statutorily it doesn't do anything.
If it's the opinion of the board that they would like for the executive committee to go back to the table and try and come up with something, then we certainly will make every attempt to do that once we have a new general counsel and with the new general counsel, and probably start with a blank slate so that. Okay.
Do we?
Sir.
I think it's important that we say what the original motion was. We received legal information. We received instructions from our legal counsel, the legal counsel at that time, I will admit, that in the state of Texas, you have to be certified or licensed to do an appraisal. And we went on record of saying that, adopting that or confirming it. Admittedly, it was a close vote, but we did go on record to confirm that. In the state of Texas, you have to be licensed or certified to do an appraisal. Now, you can call an evaluation anything you want, but if you render opinion of value, you're doing an appraisal. So, as a concession, we said, let's ask the Attorney General to look at our statute and see if that is, in fact, an accurate interpretation. And that's where we got to.
So I will read, I have some notes, and I think this is pretty close to the record, that Mr. Jeffries made the motion that the board adopt a position as presented and seek an opinion from the Office of the Attorney General. So the question today is if we are undoing that motion, or if you would like for us to go back and make another attempt at it to get that opinion.
Madam Chair, do we know, is there any facts or any information leading to that this matter will be taken up in the legislature? That was alluded to, but do we know as a fact that it will be taken up?
I'm fairly certain that FACT and the Appraisal Institute have both put this on their wish list, so to speak, that would be taken up.
I mean, the important thing is that it's ultimately dealt with, because we're into our now third year of trying to come up with a solution here.
Right.
And so I don't have a problem backing up and saying, let's start over, so long as we know it's going to be taken up in the legislature at some point in the future.
That's a great
at that
point. Just
any,
because we file
any
a bill
decision
doesn't
that we
mean-
make
right.
will then be addressed once again, and it may be changed in legislature. So we can pass the buck, that to the extent that it's that, just knowing that it's being taken up sooner rather than later. We've tried. We can say we've tried. We just didn't get there. Let's try the legislature. I don't have a problem backing up.
Okay.
I was one that voted in the affirmative to try to keep this thing going It affects my industry. I know it affects the appraisers, obviously. So we need to come to a resolution. I don't have I have a personal opinion, but it really isn't that strong because it really doesn't affect me in my daily job. I know it affects the appraisers, and that's what we're trying to be sensitive to.
So I also served on the same committee, and I wanted to add to Board Member Jeffrey's comments. I think we sought the legal counsel's opinion, and I think the bottom line was, because we had a lot of petitioners come before the board, and I believe most of their intent was to see if we could fix it in the short term and not wait for the legislature, because it was going to be a 2-year period, and then it takes 9 months after that before it becomes law. So the conclusion was that the board, there wasn't anything we could do. It required statutory revision. And therefore, because of that stalemate, we thought, well, let's go see what the Attorney General has to say. We decided to go to even higher power to get their comment to see if we were reading and interpreting this wrong. And we took a stance that in the meantime, that was our opinion that you couldn't do these until we resolved this issue. And the vote passed very narrow, yes. And so I guess what I'm hearing is we took no action because the board or the executive committee is having trouble removing their bias from the response. But I thought the response was simply to have the Attorney General look at this and see if the board could do anything. Am I wrong about that? I thought that's all we were asking. Can we take any action?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bolton?
I would relay to you that we had deliberations about exactly what to say, and in my opinion, as we were doing this, we should have simply addressed, here's the question. And frankly, General Counsel advised us that they wanted to put forth their opinion as far and which had already made a determination, at the time that wasn't okay with me. I simply wanted to pose the question, and I didn't want to make an argument one way or the other. So so not only did we have personal bias in this, but we also had contradiction between staff and the board or the executive committee as well. And so it wasn't a simple, easy argument. It was complicated, it was messy, and we went round and round about it. I mean, that's just the truth. And ultimately, we couldn't come up with a solution that all involved were okay with.
Madam Chair, I would like to add to that and then request a change in my, withdraw my motion. But Mr. Bolton had it exactly right, is that we were trying to get an opinion from the Attorney General without bias from our staff's opinion. We just wanted a yes or no from him. So in order to get this moving, I would like to withdraw my motion, and then...
Is there any objection to her withdrawal?
Try to do it in a different way. So I withdraw my motion.
Would you like to make a new motion?
Yes. I would like to make a motion that we could, that we would ask for an Attorney General opinion without, just on its own, just a yes or no, without providing additional.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion?
Madam Chair, I think if the question is just to allow the Attorney General to say, yes, we can do evaluations in Texas, or no, we can't under current statute do that, I would support that motion.
Very good. I'm certainly comfortable with that. Any other discussion? So the motion is that the executive committee will go back to the drawing board to make a to craft a question to the Office of the Attorney General, which essentially is what we already did, so,
We can do it. Just send the.
but for the sake of it, we can vote. All those in favor?
Well, can we have two motions, can we have a little more discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So.
She rescinded her original
But
motion.
then she came forward with a new motion, which I understand was seconded.
Uh-huh.
I would like to discuss that.
Yeah, yes,
Sure.
yes.
How does it differ from the first one we did in September?
I don't.
It's the same motion. The difference is that we will not, I mean.
No,
we
there's,
were-
You're right,
okay,
it's
if
not
it can't be the same and be different is what I'm trying to
It's not-
understand. How is it different than what we did in September?
It's not different.
It doesn't sound different. It may be just a different point in time.
In that light, do we even need a motion?
I don't believe that we do. I think I think what the board is asking the executive committee to do is to go back and try again, which we are definitely willing to do.
Correct.
And we will make that a priority.
All right. No motion needed.
So,
Any,
do we need to rescind?
no, she withdrew her
Oh,
motion.
okay.
Okay. Okay, move on.
Do we need you want to withdraw that last motion? Because
I withdraw the last motion.
do we have any objections to the
There you go.
withdrawal of that motion? No. Very good.
When
Okay.
a motion has been seconded, then it is owned by the entire body. So the body has to agree to allow it to be withdrawn. That's the reason for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead and put evaluations on the next agenda. Agenda item number 22, discussion and possible action to update policy for safeguarding the National Registry and add language for safeguarding the AMC National Registry.
Would you like for me to explain this? Or you go ahead.
You can likely do a much better job at this, but I will lay it out there for you. The Appraisal Subcommittee in Policy Statements 3 and 9 require that states safeguard the National Registry for appraisers and the National Registry for appraisal management companies. Under these policy statements, states must have a policy in place to ensure that state employees who access these registries safeguard their login information and ensure that the information is included in the National Registries is accurate and input timely. TALCB employees will begin to access the AMC National Registry in April of 2020 to include information about AMCs registered in Texas. And because of this important the current TALCB policy to safeguard the National Registry only addresses the Appraiser National Registry, TALCB must update its policy to add language explaining that TALCB and its employees will safeguard the AMC National Registry, as well as the Appraiser National Registry. Each employee will access the Appraiser or AMC National Registry. They must sign the updated policy once approved by the board. So this basically adds the AMC to our current policy on national registries. The staff recommendation is to adopt the updated policy for safeguarding the National Registry as presented to be effective immediately.
Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Reed Lynch.
I recommend that we adopt the updated policy for safeguarding the National Registry as presented to be effective immediately.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Reed Lynch and a second by Mr. Pena. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 23. This is the discussion and possible action to ratify comments submitted to the AQB. What happened was they just made a minor change in the licensing okay, now I can't remember.
They made a minor change which you submitted comments for on behalf of the board. So this is to ratify those comments.
It was a relatively innocuous change, and it was addressed at the Education Committee level.
Right.
And we wrote a letter in support of it, and it's already been sent, so we have it here for ratification. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board ratify the comments submitted to the AQB.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Jeffries and a second by Ms. Reed Lynch. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we need to do that. Sorry.
Agenda item 24. Priscilla Pifo, Director of Staff and Support Services, just wanted, this is an FYI, it's just to let you guys know that this happened at the commission meeting on February 10th, that there was the TREC Commission, Texas Real Estate Commission, voted to approve the proposal that was submitted and enter into a contract with Pearson VUE for providing the examination services. This is a consolidated contract that is a shared service for the board and for the commission, and the procurement was completed and awarded earlier this month. And you'll see there's a little bit more information in there if you'd like to read about it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. How long is the contract for?
The contract is for 2 years. We do a 6-year contract, and there are extensions of renewals. Thank you. I've got Jennifer here. Thank you. I'm glad you came back.
It's a 2-year contract with the opportunity to extend it for 2 years twice. So it's it could be a total of up to 6.
Thank you.
So in light of yesterday's discussion, that was part of and a small part of the exam that we heard that everybody's having difficulty with, we discussed who the 2 providers were on the appraiser side. I have no knowledge of the TREC side, so I'm not going to. So we would not even be able to entertain, if we ever were of the inclination to change providers, as long as they're currently under contract.
May I clarify?
Yes, please.
The exam providers are contracted with the state of Texas to administer the exam, not to create or change the exam.
No, that's not what I'm just saying.
That's true for the board.
We move things around.
Pardon me? What'd you say, Jennifer?
I said that's true for the board.
Yes.
Our contract with Pearson VUE does involve the creation, maintenance, and upkeep of the licensing exam for real estate and inspectors, but the AQB owns the national exam for appraisers, and they develop that in conjunction with PSI.
But when we were talking yesterday, or I have evidence that it appears that if you are going to go sit for an exam where PSI is offering or monitoring or whatever the term, they appeared to provide a lot more detail on what your expectations should be for that exam. So we just briefly touched on some possibility, maybe in the future, looking into that. I just want to be clear. If we are in a contract now, that's for 6 years.
2 years with up to 6 years.
If we renew it. Okay.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I did want to mention that we're in contract negotiations right now, so the point you're making is very timely, and we can take that into account in those negotiations.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Bolton.
I hate to do this, but I'd like to return to agenda item 21 if possible. And the motion that was made in, was it September? September was that we adopt a position and seek an attorney general opinion. And I think we need to clarify that we're not trying to adopt a position today and then ask an opinion. We're simply asking an opinion of the Attorney General. And if it's enough to just say that and clarify, or we need to move to do that.
I would assume
Council,
that would
please
take
let
a
me know,
motion.
but
That, again, because the motion in September was 2 parts, if we want to rescind part of it, then we would need a new motion to do that.
That's correct. It is unclear by the minutes what adopt a position means. And so that, the position could be, I don't actually know what was intended by that piece. People who were there may have more instruction. I can make some assumptions that it could have been around what to do in the meantime. It could have been around how to craft the Attorney General, the request for the opinion. I do not know. I think that discussion can happen in the executive committee as to what adopt the position, how to accomplish the directive provided in that motion. And we can do additional research on that.
okay, I'm going to make a simple motion, as simple as possible. The motion is to rescind the September adoption and question to the Attorney General's adoption of a position and a question to the Attorney General, and instead, the motion is to direct the executive committee to simply craft a question to the Attorney General as to whether appraisers in Texas can perform evaluations.
Does that require a second?
I believe.
It does
I
require.
second.
Is there any discussion? I will say that I think that taking that out the way that I think it was meant by Mr. Jeffries was that the board would adopt that position, which as the executive committee, we felt like having had adopted that position sort of negated the need to then get the Attorney General's opinion because we already had our opinion. So if we do take that section out, it makes our job much easier to then go to the Attorney General without an already interpreted interpretation. So I will say that makes our job easier. So any other discussion?
Yes.
I have a question of legal counsel. In order to get an Attorney General's opinion, don't you have to kind of say, this is what we think, can we have your opinion? I mean, is it a valuation and an appraisal? Do they mean the same things in the financial area as they do in real estate? I mean, don't you have to at least give him an idea of what you're asking?
You certainly do more than just ask a one-sentence question.
Right.
You ask a question and provide the statutory authority that you're looking at, and then you're basically asking for an opinion of interpretation of the statute and rules.
Right. So didn't we see the document that was done by Kristen, that she was drafting this Attorney General or the response, like we did when we did the response to the governor? It's the same kind of thing. We've got to say that according to the statute, we believe that appraisals mean this and evaluation means this, and now we want your opinion to tell us. That tells you whether you have to go to the legislature to get the verbiage in the law fixed. But without that opinion, you don't know which way to go. So you have to kind of set out what it is that you're asking.
I do believe that we could set out what the law says, what we're looking at, and leave out words like "we believe," right? So that we're just laying it out for their opinion.
Right. So we would be rescinding the board's adoption of that opinion, but submitting a question to the Attorney General with some background and context. Yes. Right. Okay.
So just my comment, it's my recollection, and I don't have the record in front of me, that the intent of the opinion was that would be our opinion until we heard back from the Attorney General. So it would be like an interim opinion, but we thought we needed to at least clear the air for where we stood as a board until we heard the final say from the Attorney General.
Any other discussion? So to repeat it, we have a motion to rescind the September motion. Are we rescinding the entire thing? And then it's a new motion? Or, okay. So the first vote is to rescind the September motion, right? But that actually has to be made then separate. Someone has to make that because it was a two-part. Someone explain it.
Compound motion?
Okay, it's one motion to do both.
You can do a multi-part motion. You could make a motion to rescind the previous motion and additionally request an Attorney General opinion.
Okay. So
Are we rescinding the entire September motion?
well, it's two
Basically-
parts, so we're rescinding one part and keeping the other.
Not what you just said.
I think so.
You could do it several ways. It doesn't really matter. You can rescind the whole thing and start again with a simple rescind prior motion and then ask for an Attorney General opinion. You can do all that in one motion. You could also rescind a piece of the motion and keep the part of the previous motion that is about requesting the opinion. It doesn't matter. You can do either one. Whatever feels simplest to you in this complex environment.
Is there a motion on the table?
Is there?
Yes, chances.
I kind of thought we already made a motion and passed it on 21, and I've already addressed it, have we not?
We did, and we're revisiting it.
Yeah.
And then she
Well,
withdrew
so-
it.
So,
No, there was no motion on 21 that passed.
no, we went back to September. What I'm saying is that if we're going to send a letter, I want to make clear that at least my intent is that we are not sending somebody's opinion with that question, which is what we were going to do before. And that's what caused so much trouble.
You have to show.
No, I don't have any problem demonstrating the case law and statutes that we think apply. But what I don't want to do is send an opinion that could, or an argument for one side or the other. And so that's what I was trying to clarify, at least from my standpoint. That's what I think is appropriate, and hopefully we'll have board support for that.
That's what the board
It's the conclusion of staff that you have a motion and a second on the table that does the rescinding of the prior motion in September and also ask for the question to be answered in an Attorney General's opinion.
Okay.
And so what's currently happening is discussion of that motion.
Okay, very good.
Okay, call.
Is there any further discussion?
Yes, one more question. Can we have the motion from September, wherever it's recorded, read back to us?
Yes. Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
I can get it if you don't have it.
Mr. Jeffries moved that the board adopt a position as presented and seek an opinion from the Office of the Attorney General.
We didn't want that.
Yeah.
Right.
We didn't want that, correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Are we doing a vote? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Let me do that again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
We have 7 ayes, 2 nays. The motion passes. Now we will move on to agenda item number 25. Discussion regarding the ASC compliance review. So Vicki Metcalf and Claire Brooks, our policy managers from the ASC, have been in Austin this week to complete the 2020 compliance review. They will review and assess every facet of the TALCB Appraiser and AMC regulatory program with a particular emphasis on enforcement. They will not review the compliance with the AMC National Registry since the TALCB has not fully implemented that portion of our AMC program. It's not yet required because it's in the process of being implemented. We expect to receive the preliminary findings and ASC recommendations in about 45 days. I will also note that we were able to sit down with the ASC for about an hour yesterday and ask some questions, which was invaluable to get information straight from them, and we appreciate their time in doing that. Any further thoughts on? Agenda item number 26, discussion and possible action regarding search for a new general counsel.
I don't have a whole lot to say about this. We are conducting a first round of interviews. That is ongoing. I expect to conclude that process, I hope, next week. When I do so, I will be able to bring a collection of finalists to the executive committee, if that's the choice, for a second round interview for y'all to vet those candidates, and we will go from there. I'm working. It's a priority of mine to complete the process, but as I said previously, I want to be very deliberate about that choice. Any questions about that?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Bolton?
I would make a motion that the second round interviews, and I'm certainly up to debate here, but just to memorialize it, that the executive committee participate on behalf of the board as a whole, unless anybody else wants to join. But I would say that the motion would be for the executive committee to participate in the second round interviews for general counsel.
I'm going to stop you.
Yeah, I was going to.
Only because this was likely my mistake that on this agenda item, we have only put this agenda item as discussion. However, I would very much like to engage any piece of the board that wishes to be part of the process, and it's a very natural opportunity for the executive committee to take part in that. If we were to use the entire board, there would need to be a posted meeting, and that that process would be extended. No, discussion regarding search for new. Oh, it does have action? Okay, I'm reading what's in front of me, and it says discussion. But apparently on the agenda, it says possible action.
It says discussion.
We have just discussion.
Just discussion.
Just discussion? Okay, I'm sorry. Nothing in front of me.
All right,
Okay.
disregard my last.
Sorry. Very
good.
So it sounds like y'all can attend. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And Commissioner Buckholz had already extended that invitation, and we meant to extend it to everyone on the board as well. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a great idea.
I just wasn't sure if we needed a motion or not.
Madam Chair, I had just a point of order. I've got a head cold, so I apologize if I'm incorrect on this. I'm not thinking clearly, but it seems like we skipped agenda item number 10, and we haven't addressed it, or have we?
Oh, gosh.
And if so,
We did.
we did go through it.
It doesn't require any
My
motion
apologies.
by the board.
Thanks.
I appreciate you paying attention.
Sorry.
So this brings us to agenda item number 27, discussion and possible action regarding agenda items for future meetings. I will say that the first exposure draft of the proposed changes for the 2022 use PAP were published a couple of weeks ago. So I would imagine that would be somewhere either on at a committee or at the next board meeting. If we have any comments for that we certainly keep an eye on that and take a look at it and decide if we need to do anything for that. Any other future items, agenda items? Okay, on to agenda item number 28, discussion and possible action to schedule future meetings and workshop dates. So our next meeting is set for May 15th. So we would be taking a look at the August date. I think it's typically done around towards the end of the month. So it's August 21st. Look like an open date? Yes, ma'am.
I'm wide open.
Doesn't work for you?
Whenever y'all want to do it.
Okay. August 21st. So we will set that as the tentative date for the August meeting, August 21st. The time, because I am magic, is 2:07, exactly 4 hours from the minute that we started. And this meeting is adjourned.